I am live, yes.
I wanted to talk to my favorite boy, Patrick.
Oh, you do? You can turn it on. You turn from underneath. Lift it up. Turn on it. Turn the switch on under there, right there. And then your red light.
And then I went there for like half an hour calling you, and then you weren't there. So like maybe she doesn't have it right.
Why would I go to the Habit without you? Think, little Navi. Oh, look. I'm sorry, yeah, that's kind of true. I'm kind of a different person around Patrick. Was he there? No, I wish I did sometimes. Honestly, I wish. I wish I did. You know, do you have that? So you would tell me, like, I wish I liked him. Me? Girl, if I was dating Toby, he's such a wifeable guy. You know what I mean? Just look at him. He says, I feel like it's like you're talking about the face. He's nice too, but like, wow. I could go camping with Toby. Imagine going Wait, Patrick wasn't there? That makes me so sad. I'm yelling at him now. I'm sorry, I haven't been alive for the past hour. Together we're gonna sing when I hear my favorite song, I know that we belong. Oh, 'cause you are the music in me. It's living on. Wait, Patrick wasn't there? Why? Patrick's not back. No, now we have to. Should I yell at him? I like want to surprise him. You know what I mean? I don't like. I'll just show up and be like, surprise, gotcha. Wait, can you start it to end that way? I thought this was it, and I was like,
Yes, that's
Okay, we're going to call back into open session the regular meeting of the Albany Unified School District Board of Education for Tuesday, June 12th, 2018. May we have a roll call, please?
President Blau,
Here.
Vice President Stapleton Gray,
Here.
Board Member Blanchard,
Here.
Board Member Clark,
Here.
Board Member Trutain,
here,
Student Board Member Athanayak,
here.
Student Board Member Silwal.
present.
Thank you. For those who wish to participate, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Reading of the AUSD mission and vision statement.
The mission of the Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating a comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
Talk about collaboration. Good. The board took no action in closed session. Next is approval of the agenda. Does anyone want any changes, modifications to the agenda?
Who did that?
If not, can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have school spotlights tonight.
Thank you, President Black, trustees, and members of the audience. It's my pleasure to turn this over to Melissa Poole, who is our principal of Marin Elementary School, who will be giving our school spotlight. So I'll turn over to Ms. Poole.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Great. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I am really glad to be here to represent Marin and tell you a little bit about what we've been up to this year. We've been working on building social, emotional, and social justice capacity in our staff, our students, and our community, and it's been a busy year. So let's get started. This goes like... So as many of you know, all three elementary schools, the middle school, and Albany Children's School embarked early on in the year in taking on the No Place for Hate campaign with the ADL. There were certain requirements for this designation in order to earn this designation, and I'm so pleased to say that our school really just kind of dove in. We didn't do the minimum number of required activities. We just thought about what we needed to do and how we wanted to support our students and our community, and that's what we did. Oops, wrong one. Julie, sorry. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Oh yeah, the arrow's great. Okay, thanks. So we started off the year leaning into some really hard conversations and thinking about our practices that had been traditions for years, and thinking about our, what had formerly been called Rancho and Colonial Day, and thinking about different perspectives on this tradition, and talking to community members and teachers and different administrators. This was a conversation that was supported by Marie Williams and all the elementary site principals as well, and we thought about how our practices were more accurately called historical arts and craft days, and how we really, and that's how we started our year. It was really leaning in hard to looking at what it is that we do, and how we talk about what it is that we do, because the languaging and the way that it's presented is really important. So. And that got us started on taking a look at some more culturally responsive teaching practices. In 5th grade, the social studies curriculum is U.S. history, so that definitely includes, starting our country, and slavery is a big part of that. And our 5th grade really leaned into that this year and examined how they teach that part of history, and all three 5th grade classes took a pause and took a step back and studied West African empires. And I have some, let's see if I can turn this, there we go. Have some examples of some work that they did on Songhai, Mali, Ghana, different posters in different classes, just different representations of the work they did to really put this in the context of where it belongs. So we prioritized getting parents in the loop as well, especially at an elementary school. We know that we need to work together with parents to support the learning of students, and learning happens best when we're on the same page and we can work together. We were super fortunate to have the services of Rudy Mendoza-Denton to lead some workshops, some parent ed nights on thinking about race and bias. I'm really proud of the fact that these workshops were open to all three elementary schools, and we worked with PTA coordinators to get these education nights happening, and it was really thoughtfully considered that it couldn't just happen at Marin, it had to happen at all three different sites, and I really look forward to continuing that work next year. There was also a night that was presented by the ADL on how to address race and bias with children and in our families. I think that the takeaway from all of these meetings was we got to reach out. We got to reach out, and we got to get a little uncomfortable, and we got to think about who we're connecting with, and connect with others, and make a conscious effort to connect with those who are different from us. And I'm really excited about continuing that work. So I know you're going to hear a lot about the library really soon. I was looking at you guys' presentation that you had going, and I was like, wow, that's really good. It's a good thing I'm going first. But a lot of our work on social emotional and social justice learning at Marin used our library and our resources, because we've talked about how important it is to have different people represented in literature. That's been a big focus of ours. I'm so proud of the fact that that in talking to Judith Carey, our librarian at Marin, when I know the ACT committee has been very busy putting together recommendations, and I know that there has been a list of titles that they offered up really early on in the year, and checking in with Judith, knowing that our library had about a third of those titles already, I was super psyched about. And knowing that we're about up to half of those it feels like a resource that we just had to use. And so in working with our instructional leadership team, we chose to have different focuses, and these were school-wide conversations that were articulated in terms of, what read-alouds we were going to read at each grade level to begin the school-wide conversations. We talked about empathy, and these are just a few of the books that Judith was gracious enough to pull for us. We talked about disabilities and learning differences. We supported a fabulous special day class at Marin this year that really challenged our growth and our learning and our mindsets, and we really leaned into that as well. So some resources on how to talk with students about different abilities was important to us. We talked about the importance of spreading kindness. Once you can think about who you are in the world and understand different perspectives, then it's a natural extension to understand how important it is to be kind. And I guess this is January, our school-wide conversation was on how can we support kindness school-wide, and so there was a read aloud, the kindness quilt, and folks read that to their students and talked about what things we can do to be kind and support one another. And our kindness quilts are hanging in our multi-purpose room. And of course, focusing on race is hugely important, and having that conversation with parents, having that conversation with kids, having that conversation with staff about how we can talk about this and how we can continue to lean into hard conversations was really valuable to our staff. And we started that conversation. We are by no means done with any of this, but I'm really psyched about the work that's been started in that area. This included an LGBT focus for us. At our last Marin morning, it was great to see all of our students dressing up in rainbow colors to celebrate Gay Pride Month. So our blues and our purples and our greens and our, just a way for people to feel proud of themselves and who they are and their families. We also have gender questioning youth at our school currently, and I think it's important for them to see that they are supported. Our conflict manager program. I know the conflict manager program has been around for a while, started long before I started in this position, and I believe before I was even a teacher at Marin. But I just believe in the value of continuing to support the conversation with students and how to talk through conflicts, because they're a part of life, they happen, and it's not that we can avoid conflict, it's that we need to understand how to work through it together. So we expanded, typically at Marin, we train all 4th and 5th grade students, and then from there they volunteer to be conflict managers. Natalie Bryce puts together the schedule. It's no joke putting that together, so thanks, Natalie, on that. But we expanded it a little bit this year to where conflict managers then went into kindergarten through 3rd grade classrooms to talk to students about how to use their services out on the yard, and I think that that's something I'd like to continue for next year. The picture's a little fuzzy, but I know you've seen it before. But it felt like having a conversation about social, emotional, and social justice work at Marin would not be complete without a conversation or just bringing up the fact that so many people, 42 guys, this was, I feel like this was a big deal in starting us off on the same page. To do the work that needs to be done in our district. 42 district-wide representatives, Val and Carrie went, and and teachers from all 3 elementary schools, including the children's school, para-educators and office staff as well, were represented in this group. We learned a lot. 16 of our Marin staff members went on this trip, and a lot was gained. I know that the district has currently contracted with Sarah White, and that's her with the red scarf in the corner. It's kind of hard to see. But this was one of the PD or workshops that we attended together, and I'm so glad that that Value supported that work, and we're interested in getting her back. And thank you to the board for approving her contract to start us all off district-wide with some PD about learning how to use the tools for tolerance in August. So thank you for that. Again, leaning into hard conversations about when it's appropriate to talk to kids about race, and lots of reasons here. Looks a little blurry. There won't be a test. But lots of reasons why, you know, even if we're not ready, there's a lot of evidence that shows that the kids are. So it's a lot of work, this business about having hard conversations and supporting the whole child and what that really means in our current context, because it's really changed nationwide for us. And so it can feel overwhelming to me personally, and I believe to others as well. But these are some pictures that I took at the Museum of Tolerance and things that I take on every day. I can't do everything, but I know that I can do one of these things. I can listen, I can envision, I can assist, I can try to empower, I can create and remember and continue to reach out and celebrate. The celebrations of the hard work that we do are so important. It's so important to respond and speak out and dialogue and educate and continue to hope. When I was thinking about how I knew that this was working, I was kind of grappling with different data points to kind of talk to you guys about tonight. But the other day I was on the playground at lunch, and you know, it's an elementary school playground. It's the last week of school. It's no joke. There's a lot going on, and between this one needs ice, there's tears over there, Miss Poole, I need some help over here. It's a lot, and the bell has just rung, and this group of kids came up to me amidst all of this, tears and definite need for ice over here, and they were like, Miss Poole, we want to post this. Can you look at this? We're so excited. Can you check it out? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to, but not right now. There's a few things going on, and I had sort of forgotten about it, honestly, and when I reached into my pocket later that day, what I pulled out was this. This is what they wanted to post. And I was like, oh, man. So it's kind of hard to see. Well, actually, it's not. But I got kind of close-ups here. This is what our students came up with. Unprovided. It's not a school assignment. You know, it's Black Lives Matter, and women's rights are human rights, and love trumps hate, and we are equal, and go LGBT, and wow, okay. And then I got kind of corny, because elementary school is a little bit corny. It's a good fit. My first movie night at Marin this year. That's a real rainbow. So, yeah, it's real. I didn't Photoshop that in there, and I was like, oh my God, I love this job, I love this school, and I love this community. And it's been a really rewarding year at Marin this year, and I just can't wait to continue the good work that has been started long before I got here, and the work that we dove into this year. So, thank you very much.
Do we have questions or comments? Board? Charlie?
Well, I don't have any questions, but thank you so much for sharing this work with us. It looks like wonderful work, and your enthusiasm is so evident, and so thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. And I believe we have another spotlight on the school library program.
Thank you, President Black. And actually, before the librarians start, I wanted to say that at the very beginning of this school year, I was at one of the elementary schools, and the 3 elementary librarians were together. I was asking, what are you guys doing? And they said, we're sharing titles of books and working on the kinds of books that we want to have that our students would like to read. And they told me about their lending library, and it was the first time that I had heard about it, and have had a chance to talk to a couple of librarians, and for Mayor just sharing with me the work that you're also doing. So I'm very happy to introduce the Library Spotlight, because you folks do an amazing, amazing job for our students. So with that, I would like to turn it over to you.
I'm Linda Perez, and I am the middle school librarian. You're going to be hearing from all of the librarians tonight, so I'm going to introduce them all really quickly. We have Judith Carey from Marin, Mare Staten from Cornell, Ray Peterson from Ocean View, and Sarah Ormland from the high school. So to start off, we wanted to say that we are the heart of the school. We serve every single child in Albany. And I want you to take a look at some of these numbers that I pulled from California Department of Education. Actually, this is also from the California Educator magazine that came out last month. And I want to talk about how special our library program is in Albany, because many school districts don't have credentialed teacher librarians. They don't have space, and they don't have staff. But thanks to the support of the community, we have designated space at each site for a library, credentialed teacher librarians at each site full-time, and library technicians at each site.
So what this graphic is showing is two things. It's showing that teacher librarians take on many roles. We're teachers and we're librarians, but we also coordinate things. We design curriculum with other teachers. We're technology leaders. And the other thing this is showing is that I wish there were like spokes, because the other thing we do is we connect things together. So we connect information with people, we connect people to people, we work with the whole school, not just every student, but every colleague and every staff member. So we have a real broad sense of what's going on in the school, and we have the ability to see the whole school as a whole and connect many pieces together.
More than 60 studies have produced evidence that school library programs staffed by teacher librarians have a positive impact on student achievement. Public schools with strong library programs staffed by credentialed librarians outperform schools without such programs, regardless of a community's parent education, poverty level, or percentage of English learners. These studies, many of them can be found on the California Department of Education website, and many of them are current.
Like classroom teachers, the librarians also work with standards. A couple of examples of standards for our youngest students. Kindergarten and first grade students start to learn about what information is, what is fact, what is fiction, where can we find books on the topics that interest us, dinosaurs, spiders, sharks. Sharks are a big thing. Where are the fiction books? They start finding the spaces of the library. Third grade students, the standards include helping kids learn about the Dewey Decimal System, which results in them becoming proficient at using the online catalog. School library standards for students are organized around the following four concepts. Students access information, students evaluate information, students use information, integrate information literacy skills into all areas of learning. And how do we do this? Many ways, including at the elementary level, helping kids discover books that ignite their curiosity and their imagination. Our students are so eager. Oh, it is wonderful to see the little kids wanting more and more books. Students use books to support their classroom learning activities. Sometimes, like third grade, they'll do animal reports, but they'll want all the books on a particular animal. Students access and learn how to use technology responsibly. They participate in literary and creative activities, and they enjoy a safe space. For many of the kids, the playground is very stimulating. Coming into the library is like a sanctuary for them.
A child who reads will be an adult who thinks. Over 64,000 books were checked out this year to students. This does not include all of the books that were used during lunch recess that were not checked out but were simply put back on the shelf. And we have about 1,500 students at the elementary level. We work with classroom teachers. We use the district database, Britannica School, to do research and to teach them how to do research. We teach students how to evaluate websites, what a valid website is and what fake news is. We teach students to cite book and website sources for bibliographies and reports. We discuss the pitfalls of plagiarism and what it means. And we support the reading and writing programs, like one of which is like Lucy Calkin's reading program for all the teachers.
Our students are connected to a vast digital universe. The engaging graphics and interactivity of this universe makes it very appealing to them. We are there to teach and assist them, guide them through this vast universe. All of these points here, accessing information, gathering, evaluating information, are part of the Common Core, and they're taught in the classroom as well as in the library. We teach the digital citizenship lessons K through 5 in the library, and we do that because we see every student every week. This ensures that that every class at each grade level gets the same message, and that's what we really want them to hear, the same message all the time. The library is a hub of activity. We've got something going on all the time. Every month it's something different, from reading challenges to programming, coding, readathons, book fairs, all kinds of stuff going on. The library is it's welcoming and safe space. It's the family room of the school, really. Everything goes on there, and I mean everything goes on there, and it gets a little messy at times. Principal Poole showed the graphic of that. The girls wanted her to post that poster of, I don't know, all kinds of rights and everything. That was created in the library over 2 lunch recesses by our 3rd graders. So yes, and it was quite the deal. And while all that's going on, it's also a safe place for students who cannot handle the chaos on the play yard. Even though there's lots of things going on, they can come in and feel safe and read and interact with other students.
And it was Barack Obama that said, at the moment we persuade a child to cross that magic threshold into a library, we change their lives forever. For the better, it's an enormous force for good.
Okay, at the secondary level, we do many of the same things that they do at the elementary level, but we do them at a bit more of a developmentally and age-appropriate level with a little bit more depth. A lot of the digital citizenship lessons that happen in advisory at the middle school, and in the library we do a little bit more with digital literacy, evaluating websites, citing sources, things like that. We also provide a safe space for our students. We encourage discovery of books, authors, topics that they may not already be familiar with or know that they're interested in yet. We collaborate with classroom teachers on curriculum to support and enhance the curriculum. And we promote engagement with the school, the community, and the world by planning various activities and sponsoring clubs. Like the elementaries, the secondary libraries are also safe spaces. There's a picture here, one of the middle school and one of the high school. Middle school and high school is, as many of you know, a time of transition for many students. Their bodies are changing, their brains are changing, social group dynamics are changing. They have increased responsibilities. They're trending towards independence, and this can be really overwhelming for many of our students. So the library is a safe place for them to go before school, during the school day, at lunchtime, after school, and sometimes even during class time when things can be overwhelming in the classroom, students can come to the library for a little bit of a safe space.
And that's certainly true at the high school. The high school really demands a lot of students. It can cause a lot of stress for our students, and they also still have maybe social conflicts that happen, and often students will elect to not go to class and come to the library, and sometimes that's okay because they need some time and space to collect themselves. And we have a really strong relationship between the library and the mental health professionals at our school, so we can watch out for people who are really struggling.
Just like at elementary, we do hope to ignite imaginations in the library with books. I know that there's a lot of attention on technology, but I think it's important to note that books still ignite imagination and engagement with our students. Our students still get very excited about books. At the middle school, we circulated almost 16,000 books this year, which is up from 5 years ago when we circulated about 12,000, so it's still in an upward trend. And this is in large part thanks to all the work that is done at the elementaries to establish a love of reading, so thank you.
Yes, and we are also curriculum partners, just like the elementary is. So that means we co-plan research projects, small ones, mediums, large ones. We also work with, especially with humanities teachers who might want students to do outside reading. So for example, if there's a teacher who wants their students to do outside reading on a theme, we'll either put together a collection of books so students can choose from them, or we'll help guide students to what they need to do. And we work with all different departments to do this. Both of our schools have clubs and activities. Some of them are around books, some of them are around games, some of them are around both. If you're talking about this amazing Quidditch game that Ms. Perez organized, which is obviously from a book, but it is also a game.
And that was a collaboration with the PE teachers.
But we really want to make sure that even though we've been highlighting how the elementary and the secondary schools have a lot of similarities, we do have some really significant differences, and ignoring these differences can have some real problems. So for example, as many of you know, my job has recently been posted, and in the job description it said for the high school librarian position that they may include a need for story time or to cover prep. And I know librarians in my library community who did not want to apply for the job because they thought it was a primary position and not a secondary position. So some of our differences include our collections. Our books are very different. My books kind of go from early middle school all the way to adult. So I have everything from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory to Toni Morrison. At the middle school, it goes from maybe mid-elementary up through early high school. So there's some overlap, but certainly their appropriateness is different for different students. And this is the really key point, that our schedules are very different. The ebb and flow of what our libraries look like is different between the different levels. So at the elementary level, the teacher librarians have a fixed weekly schedule in order to accommodate prep time for classroom teachers. So it means every Monday, maybe a first grade teacher will come in and bring their students so that they can have prep time. And it's scheduled in and it's fixed. At the middle school level, there is some fixed in Linda's schedule where there's a monthly schedule for some core classes to come in, but other than that, it's generally flexible. And then we get to iSearch, which is more intense and people are in there more often. At the high school, the schedule is extremely flexible, 100% flexible. There's no regular things scheduled that come into the library. That affords the ability for me to work with all different teachers on all different kinds of projects from small to large. It also means that because I'm not teaching all the time, I can do more school-wide projects and support other clubs and activities. I've been on a lot of committees. I've taken on a lot of clubs. I was the advisor for theater ensemble this year. And I can do that because my schedule is a little bit more open, and then I can put my fingers in more things in the school. This basically is just sort of recapping some of the things we've been saying, that what makes libraries successful is having resources and being staffed by qualified professionals, meaning teacher librarians. I hope you guys know that you need 2 certifications to be a teacher librarian. You need a teaching credential and you need a master's in library and information science. So you need that expertise to be able to do this job. The other thing I want to point out is that the reason we can do all of these things is in part because the community has supported, through school care and other ways, the funding of library techs. Our library techs are really important to us because they do a lot of the clerical work and behind-the-scenes work that helps us do all of the things we've just been talking about. They help process books, they help put books away, they help tidy up the space, they help students check out books, they provide another adult presence and supervision, especially at lunch when it's really busy. We cannot do what we do without the library techs, and we wish that they had more hours and were paid more because they're really, really, really important to this. So moving forward, recognizing that our less successful library programs are based on three things: expertise, credentialed teacher librarians, space, a specific space where we can do all of this work that's safe and clean and organized and open, and we can do all of the activities we've talked about, and resources, meaning books and DVDs and art supplies and computers. Those are the things that make our program really successful. And just a side note about resources, at the high school level, I'm actually given a bit of a budget to be able to provide resources, but at the middle school and elementary levels, almost all of their resources are acquired through fundraising. They work very hard to get these resources. They are not given to them. And they're really important because part of why students get excited about reading is new books. It's very exciting for them to see it, and it makes them feel like they have presents they can go look at and have new things that are exciting for them. So we do want to be part, or at least my colleagues who will still be here next year, want to be part of the conversation of what the school sites will look like with mixed levels, since we've just explained that the secondary and primary libraries and what we do and what it looks like are very different. And we really want to help the district and the students be successful in going forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have any questions or comments from the board? Emma.
Well, I just want to say a really, really, really big thank you on behalf of all of us. That was a really exciting presentation. I think that a lot of the times teachers and especially teacher librarians are overlooked, and not everyone sees all of the incredible and amazing things that you put time into. So this was very informative. I think teacher librarians play a really important role in not only, providing the resources and being the knowledge bearers, but also being, people that you can walk into the library and talk to about anything, or when you check out a book, it's really nice knowing that the other person across the desk knows your name. And Miss Ormlin actually let me use her office this year to do my college interview, and now I'm going there. So just goes to show. Wow. But enough about me. Next year Albany's going to have a really big shoes to fill at Albany High, but I think the incredible work you guys are doing needs more recognition. You guys need more support, and I hope that everything is well.
Thanks. Kim?
Yeah, I agree. That was a great presentation, and I learned, so thank you. Thank you for that. I think that you forgot at least one thing that you do. I wanted to mention the Albany Reads program, where there's an effort to get middle school and high school students and people in the community to read one particular book, and then there's assemblies, and then there's a author event in the evening that parents and their kids can go to. Those have been, I love them. And this year's choice, the 57 Bus, is a book that I highly recommend that everybody reads. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Ross?
First a question and then some comments. For the secondary schools, when is the library open outside of class hours?
At the middle school, we're open before school at 7:45, and we close at 4, and we're open all day long.
So it's almost the same thing. We're open at 7:40 or earlier if I get there earlier, and open on 3 days till 5 p.m. and then I think it's 4 p.m. on Wednesdays and 3:40 on Fridays. And the reason we can be open so much longer is because of the library tech. I get there at 7:40 and I work whatever I need to work, and then our wonderful, amazing library assistant, Miss Jenna, comes around lunchtime and is there to help supervise lunch, and then she's able to keep the library open all the way to 5 o'clock on 3 days, which is really helpful to students.
And I'm a huge fan of libraries, and thank you in particular, and we're losing you to Canada, I hear, that for breathing life or sustaining life in the theater program. And I hope to be personally involved in what happens going forward as this community preserves theater, I hope ever after. Both of my daughters absolutely thrived on the libraries and the school libraries, and I see Marcia in the back. The Albany Library is a hugely important resource, and I would hear from my daughter, having to leave, the library's closing at Albany High, going to the Albany Library, I'll see you there. I also mentioned in the SIPSA discussion, the meeting we had before this one, there's a program in Berkeley, Berkeley Baby Book Program, because they are getting donated books from Dolly Parton's charity that are giving to families of 1 and 2 and 3-year-olds. So I think there's a role for books and families and students at every level, and I'd love to see as much integration and collaboration as possible on that front.
Can I just, because you brought it up, thank Marcia and AAF because they fund, they do a lot of fundraisers, they purchase a lot of books for us, they help us with the Albany Reads program. So, thank you, Marcia.
I also want to bring up that I do the library at for the 2 TK classes up at the Children's Center, and the PTA up there asked me to speak, and so I addressed books in the home. And there's a program that's 1,000 books before kindergarten, and we've got a poster up and encouraging parents who walk through the hallway at ACC to read those books to their children before kindergarten. It's very important.
Charlie.
So I also would like to thank you not only for the presentation, but also for your work. And I wanted to just remember that it's been hard for this district and other school districts to consistently support their libraries over the years. There was a time when we received state funding specifically for book purchases for our libraries, and that's gone. All of our elementary libraries are smaller than they used to be, so there's been a loss of space. And so I just wanted to mention those because you've carried on and continued to do the work in spite of those kinds of restrictions. I'm really glad we still have the libraries, and I can't imagine our schools without them. So thank you for your work.
I just want to say it's been very special working here for 10 years. One thing I really love about working at Albany High School is, well, lots of things. I could list many. My colleagues are amazing to work with, and the students have just been a huge joy. One of the things that gives me the most joy about working at Albany High is seeing students over 4 years grow into themselves and have a sense of who they are and a confidence in who they are, and knowing that they're wonderful individual people that don't have to be like other people and they can make their own choices. It's a really cool thing to see, and I just want to say that working in Albany has made me feel like I can be myself in this place, and that's a really special thing, so thank you.
Well, our librarians are awesome. And next we have special recognition of 2 other awesome people, our student board members.
Thank you, and I'd actually like to ask President Black and Naveen and Mahima to join me down here, please. Does this work or no? This? It's like, we can go over there. I'll let you hang. Oh, okay. Thank you. It's easier if I do this over here. Every year when we recognize our board members, I always say that one of the most democratic things that you can do is to serve on the school board. It is, to me, one of the best and highest forms of service that you can provide because you touch the lives of kids and you make decisions that affect children. And so being our student board members, I wanted to say thank you. It is my personal pleasure to have worked with both of you this year. I've learned a lot about you. And thanks to Mahima, she's learned how I cannot dance. If you don't mind if I share, she did a promposal, and she got me to dance. So anyway, but the good part about it is that we exchanged some pretty nice emails about pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. And I think that both of you have really just pushed yourselves out of your comfort zone, but I think what you've also done is you've pushed us. You've really made us think about things and given us a student perspective that I think we really needed to have. So just a very small token of our appreciation. We do have certificates for you, which we know you're going to hang in your dorm room. But anyway, I'm actually going to have Mr. Black, if he would read the certificate of recognition. So,
in honor of your time and dedication to the Albany Unified School District Board of Education in the role of student board member, we extend to you our warmest regards and sincere appreciation.
yes, we can applause.
All right, so I guess on my behalf, it's been an honor working on the board. I got to do a lot of cool things. I started out the year as a student board member with a dream in my heart, and I think I got there in terms of things I wanted to accomplish. It also makes me really happy to see other students out here today. People warm my heart, and I think that, if anything, these are the future leaders that we have, and also our future student board member out there, Audrey. Howdy. But yeah, no, I would like to thank the board for the opportunity. I think it's been an amazing experience, and I plan to pursue student government later on in my life, and also hopefully more boards in the future. But I want to thank everyone on the board for creating such a welcoming and supportive environment for us going to us. And yeah, I'll pass it off to Mahima.
I didn't really expect that I would be on the board this year. I think Navin was sort of planning on it or interviewed. I, on the other hand, sort of stumbled into it. And it's been the biggest surprise and the most unexpected thing, but the most fulfilling thing I've probably done in my high school career. The people I've met and the opportunities I've had. Change is slow, but I think it's really nice to be on a board with people who care about the community and are willing to listen and proactive to make change. So I look forward to making more change in the future, and good luck to Albany and everyone here. And where are you going to school? Bryn Mawr. And Navin is going to
The University of Arizona. Sorry, just one more quick thing. I also want to thank Mahima Sawal, my school board sister, and just such an amazing person. She's made the board an incredible place to be, and me and her have bonded a lot. And so I want to say thank you for being my partner in school board, not crime.
So if the board can stand, you guys come back here.
Good. Okay, so much for the fun part. Now we have the, yes, we have, yes, the LCAP is later, and the budget. Approval of the consent calendar. Does anyone have any items in the consent calendar they want to comment on or pull for separate consideration?
I just want to comment on the donation report. Let me see. In the agenda packet, it's page 35. And the notable thing is that it lists the total donations for this year as being basically $515,000. So over $500,000 was donated by this community to our schools. And I think that's really notable. It shows that Albany's heart is in our schools. So I wanted to thank everybody for that, everybody who's given and continues to give. And then I also wanted to point out just one category, the in-class enrichment campaign for our elementary schools. That seems to me like it's a category where actually we might be lower than we've been in the past. And that money helps run all of the in-class enrichment programs at each elementary school. The things like hip-hop dancing at Cornell and Lego engineering at Ocean View. And I'm a little bit worried, and so I hope that we can see a report, a donation report that has year-over-year numbers for the last several years, just to make sure that those programs are not at risk and we can continue giving those enrichments.
So you're asking for an agenda item?
Yes, it doesn't, it's not urgent. We could see it in August or September, but I'd like to see it.
Okay, I'll second that. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the consent calendar? Okay, then we need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Board and Superintendent report.
Thank you, President Black, trustees. I have 3 quick items, but the first is, this is our current Director of Human Resources. It's her last board meeting. Cynthia Tia is retiring, and I wanted to thank her not only for all of her years of service to Albany, but she's been a teacher, she's been an administrator, and worked in our HR department, and she puts an awful lot of heart into the work that she does, and she keeps staff and students at the foremost of her mind. And I've actually known Cynthia for the past 7 years, almost 8 years. We were colleagues together as HR administrators and met monthly at HR consortium meetings with the county. So I wanted to say thank you very much. And we will be celebrating Cynthia at another event. She's a little shy, but I wanted to say thank you very much for your service to Albany. And you were really going to be missed. And we have wonderful Cheryl here, who I know you've been training over the past 6 weeks. So thank you. I also wanted to say a very special thank you to our ATA co-presidents, our CSEA president. We have, I hold a roundtable every month, and they meet with me monthly, and the ATA co-presidents also meet with me in the intervening 2 weeks. And I really wanted to thank them because the purpose of roundtable is to work on issues before they become problems. And we've been doing this for the last 4 years, and you guys are an amazing team, and I thank you for being on roundtable with me. And I think we do really good work together. So I did want to give a shout out and say thank you to our association leadership. And finally, it is almost the end of the year. And I know many of you were not able to be here at the presentation of our single school plans, but it is clearly evident the work that our teachers and our support staff do. And I really want to thank everybody in the Albany Unified School District, whether they be teachers, counselors, librarians, paraprofessionals, our support staff, our classified staff, our custodial maintenance staff, our administrators. Every bit of the work that you do is for our kids, and it's been a long year, and it's you guys have just done so much work, and I want to say thank you to you all. I wish you all a very, very restful summer break. And that's my report.
Okay, I'd like to report. A little while ago, the board passed a resolution asking the city to change board's voting method to ranked choice at large in hopes of forestalling a demand letter requiring us to change to by trustee area voting. The superintendent, vice president, and I met with the mayor, vice mayor, and city manager the other day. It's their feeling, on the advice of their charter review committee and their council's feeling, that they don't want to do that for us. Their strong preference is to amend the city charter to remove the school district from the city charter. They feel that the school district is administered entirely independently of the city. Whatever reasons there were for including the school board in the city charter originally no longer apply, and it's administratively cleaner and more efficient to separate us. And once that's done, we can set whatever voting method we want for ourselves without the city's having to do anything else for us. So they would like us to pass a resolution asking them to do that, which will make it easier for them to do. So that will be on a future agenda, and then we can discuss it at that time. We can't discuss it tonight because it's not on the agenda tonight.
It would have to be on a future agenda soon.
Yes.
It's going to go on the November ballot.
Right. So
And
it'll be
there
soon.
will be a lot to learn. I mean, so among other things, if they do that, the board is effectively dissolved and recreated by the county superintendent of schools and or the county board, presumably looking just like the one that just got dissolved. But it's worth knowing that that would be a rather sort of abrupt change to life as we know it. So I'm sure we'll have a great discussion on that.
Jacob?
So I'm not allowed to respond about what has just been...
We'll have a complete discussion on it, but it's not on the agenda tonight, so we can't really talk about it tonight.
But you and Ross just spoke about it.
We just reported on what we learned at the meeting.
Right.
A couple of other things. I attended the award ceremony at the high school and was delighted to see the sheer number of folks who were getting honored for various things, from athletics to academics to scholarships from their schools they'll be attending in the fall. And then 4 of us attended a forum at Albany High sponsored by the ATA as a candidates forum for the upcoming school board election. 2 of us as prospective candidates, Charlie and myself, and Jacob and Kim were also both there. Jack Morton, who's in the audience, was there as a prospective candidate. There were a total of 5 of us speaking, 1 of us here on video, and another who sent a statement. So there's at least 7 people thinking about it. And as I noted, I filed in 2014 in July to run. So I would absolutely hold the window open that many others may be interested in stepping up and joining the board unless they catch the budget discussion this later tonight.
Jacob.
So yeah, I did have something to report out. I just wanted to state that yesterday I had the opportunity to attend the 2x2x2 meeting with representatives from UC Berkeley, the Albany City Council, and the Albany Unified School District. It was nice to see the 3 organizations working together. I guess you would kind of mention after the 2x2 meeting, there was a discussion between the City Council and the school district about the election methods in Albany. I was not able to be part of that discussion because there was 3 school board members present, and that would be a Brown Act violation, so I left. And you kind of touched on what you guys spoke about, but I think in the spirit of transparency that the public has a right to know what our elected officials were talking about. And I understand you're the president and Ross is the vice president and the mayor and vice mayor were there, but there's 10 elected officials, and it will obviously come up at a later moment, but a later time, but it was a little disappointing to me.
Well, we didn't make any decisions, nor did they. They have to take that to the council. We need to take it to the board. So this was just them telling us what their preference was, but there was no decision made.
It sounds like they're...
Well, the only decision we made was that we would bring it to the board for further discussion.
4 people decided.
Well, yeah, we had the agenda committee there. The 3 of us are the agenda committee. So that's just putting it on the agenda. It's not making a decision.
Right. It also doesn't say that whereas Peggy and Rochelle Nason for the city thought it was a great idea that the board should, the city council should receive a proposal to take us out of the charter, that the city council will necessarily agree. I mean, there's 5 of them and all of them get a vote. So basically this is the leadership of the board and the leadership of the council raising an issue, recognizing that it has to be agendized and discussed in open session by both parties. Us, if we think it's a good idea, putting a proposal forward. Them, if they think it's a good idea, putting it on the ballot.
Kim?
My report out has just 2 items. One, I wanted to just note that the school district sent out a newsletter to every Albany home and to every Albany student's household. So if you lived out of district, you also got the newsletter. And I wanted to I worked on the newsletter, but I wanted to thank the district for making that happen, because it's a big step forward in trying to communicate out information to everyone about the schools, the facility programs, the budgets. My second item is that this will be my last school board meeting for this year, because on the 26th, I'm going to be in Europe, chaperone for the band trip. So the Albany High Band is going to Germany and Austria, and I'm going to be a parent chaperone on that trip. They have performances in Munich and Vienna, and a performance in Salzburg, the birthplace of Mozart, where they will be playing in the Passion of Music Friendship Festival. So I'll see the board next in August.
Thanks, Kim. Anyone else? Okay, our student board members' last report before high school graduation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ocean View Idol was this Friday, or was last Friday, June 8th, at from 6:30 at 6:30 in the Ocean View multipurpose room. Students were very excited and have been practicing for a while, and the last day to pre-order tickets was last Wednesday. It went really well, and congratulations to the students.
5th grade completion ceremony on Friday, June 15th. The ceremony will begin at 12:40 p.m. in the Ocean View multipurpose room, followed by a reception in the amphitheater at 1 p.m. 5th grade parents, please bring fresh flowers to decorate the stage and finger foods for the reception following the ceremony.
Please show your support and thanks for the Cornell Crossing Guards, Corey and Beverly. Shout out to y'all for keeping the kids safe.
Finals at Albany High are wrapping up, which means kids are ready to head out, graduate, and enjoy summer.
And on that note, me and Mahima would like to thank the board and staff for a great year together, and we wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. It brings us to persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. Do we have any?
Hello, I'm here to support the spotlight for Marin School. It's such a great place to be, but I'm also here to say that CSEA is our paraeducators and our office staff are still working really hard, and some of us aren't going to be able to be there in the coming year, and just to keep us in mind, to get some new folks in there with a little bit more wages, I guess I'm saying. Yeah, I just want to remind you all. I know we spoke about it a couple weeks ago, and just bringing it up again. I know it's on all your minds, and you talk about it behind the scenes, but I'm here to support that as well. Thanks.
Good evening, Albany School Board members. My name is Andrew Tang. My wife and I are 23-year residents and voters in the city of Albany. I think many of you know my wife, Patricia Lowe, who was a former is a former school board member. She couldn't be here tonight, but she and I both express our appreciation for all the service that you have provided to the community. The topic I want to talk to you about, it sounds like something that there have been some preliminary discussions about already, which is the election methods for the school board. My understanding is that the City of Albany may need to change its voting methods because of a possible challenge on the California Voting Rights Act. And I had understood that the city is preliminary moving on a path towards by-district elections. And when I heard this, I was flabbergasted. So a city as small as Albany with about 5,000 votes per election is going to get divided up into little districts. Each district would then have 1,000 voters in it. And in each of those, you'd have to now find not one, but 2 candidates for school board member in order to have contested elections. It just seemed a little hard to imagine that this would result in actual elections happening. And it was very disturbing to me. My neighbor, who is here in the audience, Preston Jordan, has actually done some analysis of this and has looked at school board elections by district in which there were about 1,000 to 2,000 voters and found that in 2/3 of the cases, the elections were uncontested. To put it another way, if we went to by district elections, 2/3 of the time, voters wouldn't get to pick their school board members, which doesn't sound like a democracy to me. So it sounds like there's been discussions about how to move forward. A possibility is to go to ranked choice voting. I had come here with a specific request to make, but it sounds like there's been more discussion, so I'll say what the request was, but it sounds like there may be an alternative now. So my request was for the school board to consider passing a resolution or motion at the next school board meeting 2 weeks from now to ask the city to grant the city, to put on the 2018 November election ballot a provision to allow the school board to change its voting election method to ranked choice. But an alternative, it sounds like it might be to put on a resolution to ask that the school board be put on separate from the city charter. And I don't know that much about the ins and outs of that, so I can't speak very intelligently about that. But if that turns out to be a reasonable way of going forward, I would find that something worth considering. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Anna Baker Haynes. I graduated a semester early from Albany High School this past January. I'm here to talk to you about an issue that I think is really serious and it's really important to me. And I wish that I could do that, just like speaking from my heart to you guys, but the issue spans over 1.5 years. And there's a lot that I want to make sure that I say to you, and so I wrote a speech. It's also going to go over the 3 minutes, but it's really important to me that you hear me. And if I need to speak in multiple sessions, I will do that. But I also just want to say that I'm known for being part of multiple groups in Albany, and I just want to make sure you know that I'm speaking unaffiliated. Okay, so last year I was informed by a fellow member of my dance company that a teacher at Albany High School made a disgusting and inappropriate comment about our dance company and its members to a student. That student, being a friend of many members of ADC, told his friends, and together they reported it. When I was told what was happened, I had told that it had been taken care of, and with everything that was going on, all the trauma that was going on in our community at the time, and the year coming to an end, I didn't question it much further. But when I returned to school this year, it didn't feel or look as though the issue had been addressed. When a friend of mine asked me if I knew what had happened, I said that as far as I could tell, nothing had been done, and so that friend and I decided to re-report the issue. In that process, I felt very unheard, and I was told by an administrator that I seemed too emotional to continue discussing the issue. I spoke with that administrator 3 more times and was informed that something had happened, but I was not told what. And I was also told that the situation was only an allegation because all they had was the word of the student who reported it against the word of the teacher. I wasn't satisfied with this answer, so I was sent to another admin. There I worked out a deal with that the teacher in question wouldn't be in the room for any future rehearsals or performances. I left satisfied. In my eyes, it wasn't a perfect solution, but this time at least I had been heard, and I felt like the school was willing to find a solution where I would feel safe. A few weeks later, I walked into the lip sync rally and walked out onto the gym floor ready to perform, and there was that teacher staring down at us. The entire performance, I wanted to cry. I felt exposed. I was told by administration that I was safe and that I was heard, but then I was put into a situation I was uncomfortable with no warning. Because it was lip sync, the areas in the gym by the doors were used as spaces for us to change. I watched as that teacher walked from his place above the bleachers until he was standing directly above the people changing, and I watched him look straight down for 3 minutes. I couldn't change. I missed my number. So I arranged another meeting with the administrator, who originally agreed to the compromise, and was then told that, as it turned out, they weren't allowed to ask that teacher not to attend and that the teacher was needed for supervision. I would like to take a moment to draw your attention to the fact that the gym was full of almost every single staff member. That administrator then proceeded to tell me that it was okay because that someone was there supervising the teacher the whole time. If a teacher needs to be supervised, they shouldn't be there in the first place. I was promised that if that teacher did anything else, there would be action taken. But when I explained that that teacher had watched people change, the administrator told me that that teacher had to retrieve something that had fallen. Whatever it was could have waited, and if it couldn't, any other teacher could have been sent to retrieve it. When I told the administrator this, they responded, "Well, you agreed to dance, you knew where you would be changing, and you knew that someone might see you." Yes, but I didn't know that that teacher would see me because I was told that he wouldn't even be in the room. I was called into that administrator's office 3 more times after that meeting and was asked to stop talking about this. I was told by the administrator, "I think it's time you drop this." It may seem to be a random time for me to be bringing these concerns to you, but I am here because, as many of you know, prom was 2 Saturdays ago. And one of the first people I saw when I walked into prom was that teacher. It felt blatantly neglectful of the concerns that I had previously voiced and the feelings and concerns of many other students at Albany High School. There was no reason that he had to be at prom. I am baffled by this administration's inability to handle this situation. I know that schools have restrictions and rules that they must work inside of, and I understand that that means many schools and their employees are forced to work within a system that they may believe to be flawed. I also know that many of those guidelines are here for a reason, like the rules that prevent administrators from talking about issues and their resolutions to students. Those are there to protect those accused and help ensure due process. I support due process, and I believe that people are innocent until proven guilty. But I also would like to draw attention to a couple of things. I don't think that there is currently a good system in place to make students feel safe and able to report conflicts with their teachers. Why report something if you've been shown that nothing will be done? I know that this is an issue that stretches past Albany, and I know that there are state and federal laws and regulations that our school is forced to work within. But I also know that we as educated voting citizens have the ability to pursue and make change. And I strongly believe that if you see an issue and you choose to stay blind to it, you are complicit in the problem. I have been told so many times through this process that there's a problem with the system and that staff wish they could do more. So do more. Actually take a stand. Instead of blaming a system, take steps to change that system. I know that even when people push 24/7 for change like this, it takes a long time to actually achieve it. But in the meantime, there's so much more that you could be doing to treat people like human beings. For one, listen to students like me and me. And by this, I don't mean listen blankly to the facts. I mean make us feel heard. 2, apologize. People often make the assumption that an apology is an acceptance of guilt. Regardless of who did what, if any member of your community feels unsafe, pushed aside, or angry, you should feel sorry. You should tell them that you're sorry that they feel that way, and you should tell them that they're heard. 3, never tell someone, especially a young person, to stop fighting for what they believe in. We as a community can do so much better than this. I'm here because even though I have aged out of this system, I have young women who I love so dearly still going through the Albany School District. I want Albany to be better than this so that those young women are able to fight for other issues that they're passionate about to make Albany better, not continue to fight for the same issues that girls at this school have been fighting the past decade or more. I am here because I want you to know that when you say nothing to me or you try to silence me, what I am hearing is that this is what it is like to be a young woman in this world, that you have to deal with creepy men on your own because no system is designed to protect you from it, and very few adults within those systems are willing to stick their necks out to help you change it. If we as a community and school district teach young people how to solve complex equations and write compelling arguments, but do not teach them that that knowledge is a powerful tool that can be used and should be used to make change and support their community, then we are not doing our whole job. I know that we are all learning and doing our best, but right now Albany isn't doing enough. I and other young people shouldn't have to worry about the adults at our school sexualizing us. I shouldn't have to worry about what a teacher is saying or thinking about my body at a school event. And after I know a staff member has done that, I definitely should not then have to worry about that teacher seeing me change. I'm also hearing you that you cannot do anything about this teacher or this specific instance, but I really hope that you're as upset by that as I am. I hope that you will hear me and help me and future students like me by questioning and trying to change a system that so many of you are constantly acknowledging isn't working. And in the meantime, I hope you will learn from this better ways to interact with and support students in situations like this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. I know that was hard for you to do. Appreciate you speaking up. Charlie?
That was an extraordinarily eloquent statement. I would like to ask the superintendent to speak with anybody who can provide some more insight, including the speaker, and after the investigation to speak to the board in closed session about your findings.
Yes, we can do that.
Thanks.
Good evening, board. My name is Preston Jordan. Thank you very much for your service. And I'm here speaking as an individual, not a Charter Review Committee member tonight. I want to thank Andrew Tang for providing you some information about what would happen if the school district went to by district or by trustee area elections for board, that it would severely damage democracy to the point where the majority of members in all likelihood wouldn't be elected democratically. And that means that pretty much anybody could have a 2 out of 3 chance of walking onto the board, which would damage the function of the board beyond damaging democracy. It means anybody, no matter their temperament, their experience, or their perspective, would have a very good chance of sitting on this body. And I don't think that's good for the school district. I'm disturbed to hear about this plan to take the board out of the charter. There were 3 ramifications, negative ramifications I can think of off the top of my head in the spur of the moment. One of those is that the Charter Review Committee, and this is perhaps apropos of the previous speaker, the Charter Review Committee is looking at the possibility of a charter amendment to provide 16 and 17-year-olds the vote in local elections in Albany. This was done in Berkeley at the last election. Since that time, 400 students approximately have registered to vote. They will not be able to vote this November because the registrar and the school district there are still working out the details, but they're hoping to have that in place by 2020. And research shows that there's no difference in the political decision-making ability of a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. So there's no reason not to extend the suffrage to 16-year-olds. Research shows that there is a dramatic difference between 14-year-olds and 16-year-olds. So this is not arbitrary. This is a research-based decision. Another ramification is that I believe if the board is removed from the charter, you will lose the ability to go to ranked choice at large. The 2 methods that are available in the state education code for the election of boards are either plurality at large or by district. So whoever has told you that you would have the power to go to ranked choice at large should the board be removed from the charter is misinforming you as far as I understand, and I commend you to check that with your council. Another possible ramification that's negative is that I believe the registrar charges the city a set fee. Well, I know the registrar charges a set fee per registered voter to run our elections. And I believe because the school district is under the charter, it is one fee that is charged per registered voter to the city, and the school district reimburses the city for its half of each election. Should the board be removed from the charter, I believe that the school district would be charged separately by the registrar. Again, you can check this for yourself, but this is my somewhat thin understanding, but there could be that very much bottom line negative ramification for the budget of the school district. So please, don't go that direction. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else?
Thank you. My name is Steve Shea. I don't have a prepared statement, but I do want to come and speak to you to say that I've met with a number of other Albany parents. I have 2 children in the schools, one graduating Friday and one in promotion Thursday. Love being here, love the school district, and we appreciate the work you all do. And we're still very unhappy at the moment with the settlement that the district has made in the lawsuit resulting from the really reprehensive Instagram communications. And I know that there is no one person on the board or possibly even in this room who could have made everything come out better, but as a statement of our values as a community, I think it falls short. If we want to, as a community, support our best and brightest, our greater instincts, our care for each other, the values that were expressed in the library presentation and the Ocean View presentations, I wish we had done different and better, and I don't know where we can go from here that's an improvement, but I do know that some people in the community have established a separate fund to express monetarily, materially, our different values. And I hope that you'll see the leadership from the community, find some way to address, perhaps not in this case, but in the future, a way to better support our values as a community. Thank you.
All right, this being our second to last school board meeting of the year, I just wanted to first congratulate our student board members because they're going to be graduating, and extremely proud of all the work you guys did this year and the positions you took. To the school board members, I want to thank you guys for your work. It hasn't been easy. Some of you I'm going to miss, some of you I may not. But I think everybody has to express themselves at the voting polls. And I want to be able to just, again, bring forward the issue of special education, how important that is here in Albany. Our son's triennial was up, and the school psychologist at Albany Middle School, when she comes back, she's going to be overburdened with the number of cases that she's going to have to deal with, besides my son. And that's a huge load. And I understand that the decisions that all of you have to make when you're sitting up here for all of our children in Albany is not one that you take very lightly, but one that I hope that you consider that when you are working with all of these families within Albany, you have to consider the different needs, and that everyone's on every part of the spectrum as far as demands and what our children as individuals will be asking of the district. I can only tell you that as a parent, that you just not forget the basic obligation that we all have, not just to our community and to our families, but think about the people that are serving us, the people that we want to have here. And those are the workers that are also providing this work. When she comes back from maternity leave and has to deal with this huge amount of work, I'm lighting a candle for Ms. Richardson when she comes back, for Lauren when she comes back. But again, I want to thank you guys, and I hope that you understand that every time that I've spoken out here, it's not just been for myself, but for all the families that have children that have IEPs and 504s and special needs, and that this gentleman brings up the values of Albany. Well, let's practice what we preach, and we'll work that we have been given the opportunity to be able to serve our community. Have that always present. And please think of Ms. Lawrence when she comes back. Thank you. I want to thank everybody in the special ed from the school district, and I want to thank all the work that's been done. We still have a lot more to do, and I will still be here in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on matters not on the agenda?
Hello. Oh. All right.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am not affiliated with any groups right now, speaking independently, but I just want to say a few words. Let's see here. So, I don't know, I couldn't help noticing in Ms. Poole's, like, in the work, in the display of all this work that's going on in Marin Elementary School, I couldn't help noticing that, like, that a lot of those values and those initiatives that seem to be very present in the Marin community are not present at the high school. And I think that this is indicative of a lack of leadership maybe on the high school level. And I want to say like two things. One, that I think it's common and it's in general practice that the elders in the community will set the precedent and the example for what it should look like and what education should look like and what a school community should look like. And when the elders in this Albany School District don't set that precedent, I think that will lead to these new educated students coming up, or I mean, of course, all students are educated in some way, but with these new education initiatives, I think that a lot of students might come up and feel very disappointed with what we have, and also a little bit disheartened, because I think everything becomes real in some ways when you get to the high school level and people start to recognize that, okay, this is the real world and this is how things work. And they start to identify that in their own lives. And I think that when present elementary schoolers and present middle schoolers who will be going through this new curriculum come up into the high school and recognize that a lot of these things aren't being taken care of or taken seriously in some ways, I think that will be disheartening, and that will sort of maybe stunt the growth a little bit that I think we're looking for and that we're looking to achieve through all of the new education initiatives and new programs that we're trying to introduce. One more thing is that, two really quick. I think we really want to work with you all, but we want you guys, I think maybe what I'm realizing now is that it would be wonderful if some of you could come and contact our groups a little bit more or something, or if you're interested, instead of waiting for us to come to you, or I know I'm not speaking to the administration at Albany High School right now, but I think that there's this whole thing about, oh, come to us, and we want to be open. Thank you. I think a great way to prove that is to come to us, especially because we're trying to establish these groups so that we can create contacts with you guys and create meaningful relationships. I think that's important. Lastly, I think it'd be great to try to really make Albany stand out for progressive initiatives and make Albany stand out as a great school, not get up to par, get up to some level, some particular level that we're trying to set for ourselves, but also to go beyond that and to start now in establishing that we don't want to go to this point. We want to go beyond that, and we want to create spaces and initiatives and education that leaves an open door, and it doesn't have a ceiling. I think that it would be amazing if in 10 years we talked about Albany and we talked about a school on the cutting edge rather than doing well. And I think that would be great. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Just to quickly just say some things. First of all, Toby, thank you so much for talking to that. We definitely tried to do that as a board this year with some of our board lunch meetings, which worked out pretty well in different circumstances. But thank you so much for bringing up this point, and I think in the future, if you could, or if anyone actually could work with the board to, kind of create these cutting edge ways that we can reach out to the students better, I think that we would really appreciate that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you all. We need to move on. We're running about a half an hour late, and we have a lot of work to do tonight. We have a staff report on special education.
Thank you, President Black. This is a monthly presentation that we've agreed to bring to the board, and so I'm going to invite our Director of Special Education, Diane Marie, to come up and provide her special education update. Ms. Diane Marie.
Good evening. Before I start my report, just want to mention 3 different things. The first is last week, the Best Buddies at the middle school had a banquet, and they were honored for the 3rd year in a row for being the best middle school chapter in Northern California. The preschool special day class had a little graduation last week because 5 of the preschool students will be entering school-age systems, and I have pictures of both of those events to share with the board in my next Friday update. And lastly, the special ed department is relocated. We are now at the Bancroft site, and we've been there for, gosh, I think it's been 3 full weeks now, and we'll be happy to have our friends join us because it's now only 6 of us. So we're looking forward, but that is where we are located, and things are running smooth from that location. I was asked today to report on the items, different things that have come up throughout the year, and to kind of give it some closure. One was a request for one case manager to case manage all of the students at the middle and at the high school, and that could not be implemented because of the state and contractual obligation or regulations for having a max of 28 students. Initial assessment position has been created for, it's a 0.5 to do the initial assessments at the elementary levels, and at the secondary levels, they have assigned a percentage of their FTE to conduct the assessments, as opposed to sharing them throughout all of the different resource specialists. Paraeducators, as I reported last month, we will have at least one in each of our programs that spans the entire length of the day. Training programs, we will be training paraeducators in an orientation before they begin work. We also, on each of the staff development days that teachers have, will be providing opportunities for our paras, and I have given them a kind of a save the date for what's being offered in August, the first day that teachers return, and then like last year, I will also send out a mailing asking for a response for those who can attend. We also will be providing opportunities approximately twice a month on Wednesdays, and we will be providing the paraeducators in their August letters a copy of the topics that will be covered for the entire year, so that they'll have a heads up when they are and what's going to be covered. Other highlights, we did a final draft of the handbook, and we are going to print it over the summer and get it to every new paraeducator, our current paraeducators. There will be a copy at each office and a copy in each resource and special day class in the district, just as references. Again, we continue to hire or interview people as they apply. The recruitment efforts continue, and we have put in place a clerk at both the middle and the high school levels, and it will continue next year. The elementaries teachers did not want a clerk, so this year they were given a day a month to complete paperwork and do assessments, and then next year some of the burden will be lifted by the individual who's going to be doing the initial assessments. And that is my report.
Thanks. Questions from the board? Questions or comments from the audience?
Rich Ritchie, Albany Middle School teacher, special education teacher.
It was about a year ago. I think it was the last school board meeting in June that I approached the board during the 3 minutes to ask to have agendized the subject of special education. And I'd like to thank the board and Superintendent Williams and Ms. Marie for stepping forward and having these updates. I think it's been very eye-opening. I think we're getting to some of the challenges that we have, and we're working on addressing some of those things. So I appreciate those efforts. One other thing I wanted to note on the student school board members, I remember a very spirited conversation we were having at one of our board member meetings. I think it was October or something, and we were going over the limit, and Mr. Black wanted to basically stop it, and Ms. Silwall here was like, I'd like to hear what they have to say. And we went forward from there. So this position right here, for those people who are going to be the school board student, it carries a lot of weight and a lot of power. And I want to say you do make a difference. I appreciate that. I also want to recognize Mr. Black for the following meeting, apologizing for that situation and recognizing that, you know, there was a procedure to extend the time. And since then, I think we've been kind of on track with that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I did want to address a couple of things. The clerk position. We did start off with a clerk position. Ideally, we wanted a case manager position for the reasons we've discussed. We have the clerk 2.5 hours, an hour in the morning, and then I think it's 7:30 to 8:30 at middle school. And then we have the clerk for an hour and a half in the afternoon, around 12:31. And what we're finding is as we bring this person into the fold of special education and ask them to kind of learn about what IEPs are and what some of the job responsibilities are, that these things, and I think I've said this before, is that her job currently could expand to more hours. And also having access to SICE, which is our special education information system, I think is critical to that role. Because there's things we would like to give her to do, and she can't do them because she doesn't have access to SICE. And I understand there's confidentiality issues, but at the same time, you know, this particular person has access to ARIES on a global level because her other 0.8 or whatever it is that she has at Cornell with attendance has all that access. So she has knowledge of pretty much everything. So I would like to ask for more hours for the clerk, because there are instances when she leaves at 8:30 and things are somewhat orderly, and then at 8:50 we get an email saying, oh, so-and-so's called out. And then no one's there in theory to handle that. And again, the issue of conflict is that if I'm teaching a class and I'm teacher of record, I shouldn't have to stop the instructional minutes for those students to, you know, do the paraeducator assignments and so forth, because now I have not provided the instructional minutes to those students because I'm teacher of record. So there is a need, I think. We're just learning and scratching the surface for the clerk position, but I think easily we could expand that out. I've asked the clerk to please make an appointment with the site administrator, Ms. Burl, as kind of a like after action kind of update of, she's been with us for a couple of months now, kind of what she's seeing, a flow of her job and some of the incidents. All of her coordinations are quite complicated, and she's documented it, which is amazing because we never had time to do that as we're teaching and we're just trying to make it happen. And I'm forwarding all of those to my site principal to say, look, this is like this long. And that's how many times we had to move people around and consider students' needs and all those things that we care, because this is Albany. That's why people come here for special education. So enough said on that. Lastly, I'd like to go, or at least propose, back in October, November, I believe I provided a list of things to the board, and I was kind of wondering if we could get a year-to-date roll-up on the number of initial assessments we have as a district, because I think that paints the picture of the kind of workload that we're dealing with, regardless of who's it assigned to. we need to see that. I'd like to see maybe the number of 504 assessments that are being assigned to special education staff to do, because that impacts special education teachers and school psychologists and things like that. The number of private school assessments that we've had to do, that again impacts our staff, okay? The number of total out-of-state placements, and potentially what does that cost to this district? What does that mean? And I think everything else we pretty much hit on. Ms. Marie talked about paras and moving forward with the para handbook and training and all those things that are wonderful that we're finally starting to move forward on. And then, of course, as I know, CSCA is also engaged with talking about wages as well. And as I've said before, we can't do our job without them. These students really benefit from that team of teacher, paraeducator, consistency, not rotating every day, full shifts. So please really, work with them as they approach the table. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on special education? Okay, so that brings us. There's one. Yes.
Special education. Hi there, Council. Thank you. So my name is Jeremiah. I graduated Albany High School in 2001, and I didn't know you guys were going to talk about special education. I'm a highly productive citizen in my community, and I was actually in special education at Albany High School. I'm okay to admit that. And there's a lot of people out there with unseen handicaps and unseen things that people don't see, but they're little disabilities. And I don't believe I would have graduated Albany High School without the help and the extra assistance and the extra period to help get my homework done. 50 minutes in the class just wasn't enough time for me. And I just needed a little bit, I needed more one-on-one help, because you're in a big classroom with 30 people and it's like a lecture hall in college. I went to Long Beach State. Okay, I graduated Albany High School with an overall GPA of 3.73. I was a quarterback of the football team, I played baseball, and I wrestled. But I had a learning disability. And I cannot retain what I read. When anytime I read a book, I read the same sentence over and over and over. I can't get anywhere. And reading just wasn't my thing. I'm just an active kid. So special education is a big thing. I'm not sure what you guys were talking about. But it's a really important thing that you keep that open and keep students involved and having really good teachers. I know Miss Alexia Ritchie. She was my Math A and English 1 teacher. And she made everything so clear. And she was so nice. And she helped me understand. And I got it. And Alexia Ritchie, now she's the principal at Albany High School, and what a wonderful principal we could have at Albany High School. So special education is really important. More teachers. I'm a volunteer at the Gilchak Farm here, and one day a week, Albany High School class comes out, and Tina, she's over here at the farm, and she was actually my special education teacher in Albany High School. And we have a great relationship, and all the kids come down there, and they're just people. We're people. And I was friends with everybody in high school, even the bullies and the troublemakers. Everybody just needs a friend. Everybody's just waiting for someone to be nice to them. But in high school, it's so easy to be bully people and pick on people and, peer pressure. And it goes unnoticed. There's no police on there. And people get away with theft and bullying and all sorts of things, and it's terrible what happens in high school. But once you grow up, you start to learn things. And so special education is very important, and I'm a very highly productive citizen because I got the extra help that I needed. And I had that since I was in elementary school. So I'm very thankful for everything, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, and then...
I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's hard to do that and it's what people here teach for, and it's just wonderful to hear the outcome. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jacob?
Basically the same thing, maybe just in a little bit of different terms. But yeah, thank you so much for coming up and sharing your story, and big props, and nice to hear you're doing so well, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Council.
Thanks. Okay, we now have the Local Control Accountability Plan. I hereby open the public hearing.
Thank you, President Black. I'm going to turn this over to our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Marie Williams, who's going to take us, if the board has any questions, regarding the Local Control Accountability Plan.
Well, since I'm here, maybe I'll say a couple of words. I'll just say that this has been my first year working on the Local Control Accountability Plan in Albany Unified School District. It has been a very illuminating experience for me. I want to sort of just really quickly remind us of where we have been in getting to this place in the process. We throughout the year, just based on sort of different requests from board members around wanting to hear different information about different programs in our school, we actually covered a lot of ground in terms of sort of really digging into the data before we even got to January. And then in January, we began our formal process of engaging stakeholders. We tried something new this year. In addition to meeting folks face-to-face and talking about the data, we implemented an online survey that wasn't hugely popular, but we're going to keep doing it next year as a way to afford many more people an opportunity to give input. And we met as a committee, and we talked about the many pages of feedback that were received. And we talked about the key themes that were coming up in the feedback, and were encouraged to see that the items and actions that we identified in the LCAP for next year also came through as themes for from our stakeholders for needs for our school. And so we also recognize that we don't have endless stores of money, and probably less after the next item, and yet still have a responsibility to provide the best quality education that we can for students. And that really is about us then prioritizing and being strategic in the supports that we provide on behalf of our students. And so this is our public hearing. Our next step in the process would be that we would request that the board approve this plan. We have some corrections to make, some updates, some clarifications, and some edits. Thank you, Board Member Black, for pointing those out. And so, you know, this three-year plan really gives us an opportunity to, from year to year, monitor how we're doing. There wasn't an expectation that we throw it out and start again, but we do have a couple more years in this cycle, and I'm already really interested and excited about thinking about how we approach this process next year, and how we can really use the LCAP, really use this document to be really strategic in thinking about how to support all of our students to reach their fullest potential and to be successful. So that's my introduction to that.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Charlie?
Well, first, thank you very much for all the work that I know you put into this. It's a huge job, and it's one we have to do. It's what the local control funding formula says we're going to do. And I really appreciated the way you began to connect this document to our budget. So for the first time, we're actually seeing a little bit more in the LCAP related to the budget, what the budget implications are. And that's the way it's really meant to be. I mean, it's really meant to be something that helps us structure our budget. I think what I wanted to suggest going forward is that we find a way to kind of connect whatever group of people who are maybe working on the LCAP, we have a committee, to the budget review committee that we have yet to finish creating. And I think it will make the two more real. It'll make the LCAP more real to have it connected to some kind of study and assessment of the budget. We're certainly going to have a big job next year as we think about what we have to do to bring the budget kind of a little closer to reality than it is right now. So that would be my suggestion, is that we continue to find ways to make this a real living process with real budget implications. But I just wanted to appreciate the fact that you've taken the first steps.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that we want to be connecting sort of the priorities with the expenditures, and we want those processes to happen sort of in a seamless way. I know the superintendent has also been talking about next year sort of taking a look at the strategic plan, and so then here are these really sort of great big projects to take on, and so how do we make those 3 projects sort of one project that starts and then sort of keeps moving forward, so that we're not sort of dipping in and out of different processes and bringing different people along and having to orient people to those different processes, but how do we start at the beginning, really thinking about the big picture of the work that we have to do as a district, and then sort of map out that work moving forward. And I think aligning and connecting budget and LCAP is really a crucial part of that. And I just want to say thank you to Doug Krancer for the work that he did in supporting tying very explicitly the actions and services in the LCAP to line items in a budget, so that if I want to know in October how we are doing on implementing professional development around culturally responsive teaching and practices, there's a budget string for that now, and I can pull that up and look at sort of where we are in that work, both sort of anecdotally in my own mind, but then also thinking about, do we need to move faster? Do we need to slow down? So I really appreciate, Doug, you bringing that as a concept, because I think it has helped me sort of more intimately know what's happening in that document, and I think it will really help us to communicate more transparently sort of how that document is working for us in the district. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that, but it was also you, because I couldn't have done that without your guidance, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to say, despite my copy edits, because that's what I do, it was very well written, easy to follow. I was reading it during a 14-hour plane flight and was actually able to follow what I was reading. So it's thank you for that. It's great. Do we have any other comments or questions on the LCAP?
I had a question that, because I was actually sort of more confused after I read some of the questions and answers about this. Then there was a mention of due to an increased need, district maintenance staffing was increased by 1 FTE. I think this is on page 242. And then it seemed like maybe perhaps this was just sort of a switch between a custodial person to a maintenance person. So there wasn't an additional FTE added to the district budget.
That's correct, yeah. So Douglas did some research on that and found that there was more of a need in maintenance, and maintenance is called out as an action in the LCAP, where custodial services are not called out in the LCAP. And so what you saw was what looked like an increase, but then unseen was a decrease, so that it really was a wash.
Yeah, what's confusing is that although the LCAP is tied to the budget, it doesn't cover the entire budget. No. There are certain things that are mandated to be in the LCAP and some things like custodial services that are not. So some things that are in the budget are never mentioned in the LCAP. If you add up all the expenses in the LCAP, it won't come to the budget.
Right. And the only thing I would add to that is that when we were at the Governor's May Revise, there was a lot of talk about movements toward being more transparent with community and families in terms of budget expenditures. And so while right now districts have discretion in terms of the dollars that they identify in the LCAP beyond LCFF and supplemental and where appropriate concentration dollars. My sense is that before too long, we will be in a place where we will be sort of held to a higher standard around reporting more of the dollars and attaching sort of the actions that we are performing in service of students to actual expenditures regardless of the source.
Others? Oh, okay. So in that case, does anyone from the audience want to ask questions, comment? Well, then we're going to close the public hearing. If it's the will of the board, we'll bring this back in consent at the next agenda. Is that okay? All right. Then we will move on to a simple and non-controversial item. Public hearing on the proposed budget. I hereby open the public hearing.
Thank you, President Black, trustees. And I do want to introduce Douglas Krenzer, who is our interim CBO. And Douglas has been working very, very hard with myself and my staff, but also has spent time making sure that he's in contact with Alan Gard to make sure that we have a connection between some of the history as well as some of the what has to be done. Doug also attended the governor's May Revise with me, sat right next to me, and then we went through the budget sort of almost line item by line item in many senses. So I do want to turn this over to him, and thank you for being here in Albany with us.
Thank you, Superintendent Williams. Good evening, board. It's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure working with the staff at the district. They're wonderful to work with. It's a great team, and thank you again for the opportunity. Well, tonight I will be going over. Oh yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Tonight I will be going over the 18-19 proposed budget, and the PowerPoint that you'll see in front of you that's also getting handed out so you can take notes if you wish to, is just a summary of the summary that you got in the board packet. So I'll be going over quickly going over the governor's May revision, the primary funding factors that are that make up the budget, revenue and other sources, and I'll also talk about the expenditure factors, as well as I'll go over the expenditure and other uses in terms of how they are district-wide. I'll be going over the general fund summary, the 18-19 unrestricted deficit spending reconciliation, which is a comparison between what the 18-19 projected budget was at second interim to what the proposed 18-19 budget is. I'll be going over the fund balance summary, subsequent year assumptions for the multi-year projection, the PERS and STIRS. I'll quickly go over those increasing rates, talk about the multi-year projections, and the fund balance disclosure that's required by Senate Bill 858. And lastly, go over the fiscal status and next steps and questions. And then please, if you have any questions, please ask at the time. You don't have to wait until the end or anything. So the cost of living adjustment is estimated to be about 2.71. It actually is not estimated. It's going to be 2.71, which is up from 2.51 in January. In addition, there's going to be a small augmentation to make it a full 3%, but that's just for the local control funding formula, not for other state programs. The governor does plan to fully fund the LCFF. However, fully funding means back to 2007, 2008 levels, adjusted for COLA. What's listed in the May Revise is about $2 billion in one-time discretionary funds for the state of California, for districts in the state of California, which equals about $344 per ADA. The May Revise continued the proposed ongoing $200 million increase to career technical education as proposed in January. And there's additional funds to improve the fiscal transparency regarding the LCAP.
So I hope you don't mind me interrupting.
No,
so quickly.
of course not.
The third bullet on that previous slide there, I think we've just gotten kind of an announcement that suggests that that's going to be a little bit different than the May Revise, the new agreement between the governor and the leaders of the state legislature. I don't know if you have any more information you want to share about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So actually, I was going to get that towards the end in terms of what's changed, but I'll just say right now, it's what's the agreement is. It's actually about $1 billion instead of $2 billion. So that amount is actually expected to be cut in half. But as of the May Revise and what's included in the budget is the 344. What's going to happen is once the state budget is enacted, and if it is truly getting cut between by half, then a revised budget will be presented before the board for approval. Now, on the other side, with the LCFF, we're expecting that to be a little bit higher because an additional $407 million was agreed upon the legislative committee and the governor. So it looks like it'll go down in one area and it'll go up in the area. What I don't know and what we don't know is the meat and potatoes behind that $407 million increase. We don't know what amount per ADA that's going to equal. It'd be great if it's a wash. I don't think it will be. Maybe over the course of time, I'm sure it will be. But for 18-19, no. But
Yeah.
thank you for that.
For 18-19, it may not be, but we're likely to see more ongoing revenue.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
That was my question.
Yeah, at least it'd be ongoing until.
Which we would rather have ongoing money than one time.
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
2 years from now, we'd rather have it.
No, but I mean, it's
Yeah, we'd rather have it.
it sounds as if it's a bad thing. It's not.
No, it's a good thing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Average daily attendance for the 18-19 budget is estimated to be 3,510. However, due to declining enrollment, the district will be funded on 3,542. Because school districts get the higher of the current year ADA or prior year ADA. The little adjustments here and there, but for the most part, they get funded on the prior year ADA. Yes, sir.
Could I just stop us a minute and say thank you so much to Mahima and Navin? And good luck with all the finals that remain, if any remain. And yeah, take your name tags.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you so much. I am gonna hang this on my dorm, just letting you know.
Yeah.
Everyone will walk past me and be like, oh, yeah,
Cool.
that kid who's on the school board. And I was
Yeah,
like, yep.
cool. Right.
Yeah, well,
So thank you and best of everything.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
See you at graduation.
All right. Cheers.
The unduplicated percentage for 18-19 is estimated to be 29.64. However, that's a preliminary number, pretty much based on 17-18 percentages. So, but that amount will be revised pretty much at second interim once the CalPADS report is complete. Usually, they don't fluctuate too much. Due to strong community support, the district is expected to receive approximately $6.1 million in partial tax revenue. Lottery is estimated to be $146 per ADA for unrestricted purposes and $46 for restricted purposes. And actually, the total expected lottery funds is about $687,000. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Doug.
Oh, no,
This
no
is,
interruption.
But the $6.1 million of parcel tax revenue, are you able, just off the top of your head, to divide that between Measure J and Measures LL?
It's about, I think, let's see here. I think, well, Measure J is...
Probably close to 2/3, 1/3 is my sense.
But I can definitely get the specifics. I think the larger one is around like 4.5 and...
1.5.
Yeah, 4.5 and 1.5.
Okay.
1.5 and 4.5. Now, which one? I forgot which one's the larger one.
It's J.
J is the permanent one, and but it's more like I think well, yeah, that's probably right in terms of the dollar amount. Yeah.
I can definitely get them more specifics on that.
I think J is something like $550 a parcel, and double L is closer to $300.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The mandated block grant is estimated, or is proposed to be $31.16 for K-8 ADA and $59.83 for 912. And actually, the total amount that we're expected to get for 18-19 regarding the mandated block grant, these aren't the one-time funds, just the ongoing block grant funds, is about $142,000. And as noted above, the district was expecting to receive about $1.2 million, but it's going to be actually closer to about $600,000 if what was going in through the budget committee comes to fruition on the enacted budget. Here's a graphical representation of the unrestricted general funds. We have about 90% in general purpose, and for the most part, that's LCFF, which is comprised of state aid, education protection account funds, as well as property taxes. Other state revenues, 5%. And then examples of the other state revenues is the one-time mandate, block grant funds, and lottery. Other local revenues at 4%, and transfers in and indirect cost recoveries about 1%. So the indirect cost recovery is kind of interesting. It's actually like a negative expense, but so for all intent and purposes, it's actually revenue coming to the unrestricted portion of the general fund. So I like to include that in there. For combined, about 67 for the general purpose funds instead of 90, and that difference is due to more local revenues, primarily the parcel tax, as well as the addition of federal revenues and other state revenues. For expenditures, the STEP and known call movements have been included because every year employees get a step on the salary schedule unless they're at the top, and then they get longevity. So those have been accounted for. Staffing adjustments have been included. STRS and PERS rates have been included as well, and there's a chart later in the presentation which goes over the rates. Supplies services have been adjusted due to program and operational needs, primarily tying those out to the LCAP. There we go. Expenditures related to the LCAP expenditures have exclusive account code strings, which allow for more efficient tracking. For health and welfare, the benefits are budgeted according to, right now, preliminary rates provided by PERS. Kaiser rates were actually expected to decrease by about 1.5%. However, Blue Shield is expected to increase by about 25% for 2019. But the year prior, it went down by 15. So it's what the final rates come in is anyone's guess. And what I've been told is the preliminary rates are usually higher than what the final rates are, which we'll know around September. Yes.
Our district doesn't provide Blue Shield anymore.
I'm sorry?
Our district doesn't provide Blue Shield anymore, right?
Yes, we do.
Goes up because the difference is getting bigger in both directions. But we do have it.
Yeah. So the reason why I picked Kaiser and Blue Shield is Blue Shield drives what the district contributes for on the single plan, and then the Kaiser drives what employees get for two-party and family. So depending on where they're at.
Yeah.
Yes.
So again, I hope you don't mind me stopping you for a minute here. As I recall, basically, the increases usually are for a calendar year, and I think you've indicated that here.
That is correct.
So, excuse me. So our fiscal year, of course, is split between 2 calendar years.
And that's why I get to that weighted average.
Yeah. So basically, then I'm still trying to get at why we see sort of one set of numbers in the second interim and a different set of numbers here. And it appears to me that you've probably got higher expected increases budgeted for 2019 than Alan might have used in the second interim. Because 25% is a pretty big number here. I don't think he used 25%.
No, he did not. So the weighted average, so in 19, when you compare just 2018 to 2019, it'll go up by 25%. But the weighted average, since Blue Shield went down so far the prior year before, the weighted average for Blue Shield is actually 4.6.
So that's what you came up with. Do you have any sense of if Alan wound up with a different set of projections? It's the only way I can rationalize.
He used 3.
He used 3. So he used 3%. You're using these 2 numbers here. And then I think you also answered this question. It helped a lot when I sent you some questions that it sounded like he was projecting 3% increases, annual increases in subsequent years, and you're projecting 6%.
Correct.
So that's really one of the key differences between what we saw at second interim for health and welfare costs and what you're presenting is that you have a more cautious projection or a user beware kind of projection than what we saw previously.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, let me talk about that. Alan knows this budget backwards. I mean, he knew it very, very well. I'm just coming into it. So he knows the intricacies. He knows the tweaks. He knows, what, he's much more familiar with that. So he can budget more accordingly and maybe not be as doom and gloom or conservative. Me, there's still things that I don't know in terms of the intricacies, the tweak. So I tend to take a more conservative view with the hopes that once everything kind of settles down, that we can add more money to the fund balance rather than, this is going to be, that's the hope. So he, like I said, he knows that budget backwards and forwards, and I was able to pick his brain as much as I could, but he has that big task in Hayward.
Yeah,
So.
but it does sound like one of the key differences here is you are projecting higher rate increases than he had in there, and maybe he got to the point where he was more comfortable using a lower projected.
Because he knew other areas where, it would probably balance out.
Okay.
And I do the same thing. If I'm in a district, for 3 or 4 years, I just know it. I know what's going to level, and that way I can tell more of a consistent story rather than, okay. So, and also that 25% was like, so maybe I should just go up just in case too. So, other districts I'm doing 10%. But I figure 6 would hopefully cover that. Health and welfare benefits for field. Okay, and this is another thing for the increase. For field positions, for positions that are already filled by people, are being budgeted according to their personnel records. So it's not like we're going to budget everybody at the cap. Some districts do that, and then they bring it down a lot. However, for vacant positions, that's being budgeted on the two-party level. So, for example, let's say you have a temp employee, and they get released, and let's say they weren't even taking benefits, or they were just taking vision. So then that temp gets removed, a vacant gets placed, so then that vacant position is being budgeted around $22,000 a year. So then if that temp goes back into that position, then you'll see that amount drop, unless there's a qualifying event or an open enrollment where that employee decides to take benefits. So that's a major variance as well. This is really just, there's going to be a lot of changes with the health and welfare costs through open enrollment. So pretty much for the next 6 months. And then it'll get static, and then we'll know where we're at. So that's just going to be a moving target. So I talked about the vacant positions, and there you go. And health and welfare projections will be revised pretty much more in the fall when we're given the rates, and then the participation in terms of who's going to participate in what. Here's a graphical representation of the unrestricted general fund in terms of the expenditures. 89% of the expenditures is salary and benefits, and interestingly, when you look at the combined, it's also 89%. Actually, I've never seen that before. Usually it's higher in the unrestricted and lower in the restricted, but I think just because you have so many instructional programs out of the restricted fund, it's pretty much mirrors each other. Here's what we expect to get in education protection account funds. Really, it's a requirement that this gets discussed at a public meeting. And actually, what Alameda County Office of Ed has also recommended is for the board to adopt a resolution. So you'll be seeing that at the next meeting, just saying, here's the resolution and here's what we're going to spend it on. But really, the resolution will mirror this amount. Since the district is LCFF funded through state entitlements, really the more we get in EPA funding, the less we get in state aid. So it counterbalances. Whereas in other districts, if you're fully funded with property taxes, then that would actually be extra money. But unfortunately, if this goes higher, then another pot goes lower. So it balances out. Here's a schedule of what we're contributing from the unrestricted portion of the general fund to restricted portions of the general fund. The partial tax programs, because revenues aren't able to keep up with the expenditure increases. We're actually contributing about $300,000 to the parcel tax programs. Restricted maintenance is about $1.4 million, which is just shy of the 3%, but right now for these 2 years, there's flexibility. And special education at 5.1 for a total of 6.8 million. Yes, sir.
So I'm just going to offer a comment. This is just my personal perspective. I want to share it with the other board members. It's not really a question. But I think it's always been confusing to have a kind of a contribution to parcel tax programs as a contribution. The parcel tax is a source of revenue, not something you have to fund. And we are stuck with this kind of situation where we cannot adjust the rate of the larger of the two parcel taxes. And so given that that's a flat, fixed dollar amount, it would make sense to me that we have to reduce what we spend that money on
rather than contributing
from the general fund. Or we need to have a discussion that what some of the parcel tax programs used to pay for, we want to continue paying for from the general fund. One way or the other, it would make sense to me to just report it a little bit differently.
Sure, take those expenditures out and put them into the unrestricted.
Well, we should actually identify them, I think, and say, we've got some tough choices to make here.
Discontinue it rather than transfer.
Well, I wouldn't, on my word, discontinue anything, but give the board an opportunity to identify what's there, to consider either intentionally supporting it from the general fund or discontinuing it.
I see.
One way or the other. But it's just, for me anyway, it's just a little confusing to see it reported in that way. I suspect I'm not the only one.
Yeah, it's the way it's written. It's confusing. But what we really need to consider is what we can pay for. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
How it's accounted for in the budget.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's just sort of we could talk about that more later, but it's just a kind of a comment, an observation.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Here's just a quick snapshot of the general fund. Notice that the 1819 proposed budget is projecting a deficit of 1.8 million. Restricted about 34, but that's coming from its own reserves, so I wouldn't be concerned with that. For a total deficit of 1.89, which leaves an unrestricted fund balance, and I'll get into the components a little bit later, of 5 million, restricted about 292 for a total of 5.3. At the second interim, when the 1819 budget was being projected, it was projected at 517. Now we're at 1.8. And what I've tried to do is, I just focus on the unrestricted portion of the general fund, and I tried to find out those big ticket items that account for those differences. Because really, when I ran it, I was like, whoa, okay, 1.8. And then I go back to the second interim and go, okay, where was it? Was it pretty close? Oh, nope. Okay, so let me look at, in terms of what those differences were. So for revenue, revenue is pretty much right on, a couple ups, couple downs. Local control funding formula down by 79, even though we're getting more money, it was based on declining enrollment. We're actually getting less money. Now, again, this is all based on May revise. So one-time mandate funds, they actually increased from January to May. So we were able to capture 173. That puppy's going to go down of additional funds. Remember, the total amount for the one-time funds were 1.2 million. Lottery and redevelopment revenue, about 64 lost, because those are pretty much uncertain, and then lottery, just based on the rates, multiplying it by expected average daily attendance, resulted in a little bit less. For the expenditures, additional teaching positions, 1.2, that's split between instructional, well, actually both are instructional. One's a classroom teacher and one is teacher on special assignment of 0.2. And what I did was, this is just a little bit of more of a summary than was in the packet, just to get it on a schedule rather than having it span over two slides. Health and welfare benefits, $281,000. Retiree benefits, or OPEB, $250,000. And the reason for this was right now for 17-18, a portion of retiree benefits was being paid out of operating revenues, but then the other portion was being paid from reserves or carryovers. So those carryovers are being exhausted as of this year, so we actually had to increase the budget to make sure that we're able to pay for those retiree benefits. PERS increase, $50,000. That's a combination of the rate changing a little bit from what was in January to what was formally adopted by the PERS board, as well as vacant positions. So like some positions, they don't get PERS, but the system budgets it. So again, once people are placed in there, and depending on if they qualify or don't qualify for PERS, that may change as well. Instructional and safety supplies, $135,000. Professional development, $50,000. Legal and insurance, $56,000. Additional Albany Aquatic Center costs, $85,000, and that relates to a manager position that was pretty much vacant for the whole year, but then that position was hired, so we put that into the budget. And parcel tax support costs. Now, this was something that instead of increasing the contribution, these actually got moved from the parcel tax to the unrestricted portion of the general fund. And increased special education outside services, about $150,000. And other adjustments is just pretty much all these other little differences in order to get to that to the 1.8 million. Yes.
So again, I'm apologizing for slowing you down a little bit.
No,
here,
not
but
at all.
I'm hoping to tease this apart just a little here.
Hmm?
Yeah, I know. It's still a little confusing to me because when I compare the second interim 2018-2019 projected to the current proposed budget for 2018-2019, what we have in the current budget is, for example, the combined restricted and unrestricted certificated salaries are $360,000 higher than they were in the second interim. And so
certificated salaries?
Certificated salaries. And so what I see here is a total of $137,000. And I realize, of course, this is just the unrestricted part of it. But the total, when I compare them side by side, combined, restricted plus unrestricted, the difference between the two is $360,000. So we've got a $360,000 increase in certificated salaries. Is the difference in the restricted part of the budget? I mean, right here.
I think it would have to be, yeah. And I didn't spend time on the restricted portion since the contributions seem to be in line with that. So.
But that means we still have sort of $230,000 of cost increase in classified salary that I can't quite identify where it's coming from.
In classified or certificated?
I'm sorry, certificated.
Okay.
Certificated, yeah. So, maybe we could look into that a little bit more, see if have we really got this right? I mean, I'm sure that's right. You've run the numbers. But yet when I do the comparison, the side-by-side comparison, I do have a $360,000. But that would be $230,000. Well, maybe it is possible. Could step and column go up by 230?
But you were comparing it to the projected. So
Yeah,
step and column would be in both.
It would be in both. So that's a wash. Yeah. So I think I'd like us to look into that a little bit more because there is a definite increase in how much we're putting into certificated salaries that I can't quite explain here.
Yeah.
And of course, I think I did send you a couple questions, and maybe, Val, this might be for you to talk to Alan about. Like, I'm still not quite understanding why in Alan's second interim, he's got 225 FTE for certificated, 225.1, I believe, And here we have 232, I believe.
So I know about that. So what it is there was 5 FTE. So the district spent this year about, I think, between $300,000 and $400,000 on people on leave of absence. So I couldn't find a detail of that 225. But I assigned like 5 FTEs in order for the program to generate that amount. So even though that money was already in the budget and it was carried over to the next year, I put in 5 FTEs in the budget, saying, okay, this is pretty much equivalent to 5 FTEs. So it wasn't a dollar increase,
right? Okay.
But it was an FTE increase. So then there's 5 of that 7.5. Then we have the other 1.2. So that came within a point, pretty much around a 0.8. So as far as I can tell, that is I think that's the reason.
Okay.
However, I didn't have a detail of that 225. However, from now on, not only here, but everywhere, I'm going to make sure that I keep a detail of FTEs for the interims, because usually I don't do that, and either did Alan, but make sure that, okay, well, we have a detail of the FTEs and where are they exactly in the budget, and having that detail is key. So for example, in the criterion standards for this year, for those FTEs, I definitely have a detail in terms of position, person, account code, the whole shebang. And usually for adopted budget, people have that. It's just now that the system encumbers the salary, it's not as needed until the question of why comes up. And then once the question of why comes up, then it's like, oh, wow, I wish I had that detail. So again, we have the detail on the proposed budget. It's just having that detail on the on the interim one.
Yeah, so the numbers, the differences we see in the actual FTE may be simply a reflection of a reporting difference,
I believe
rather
so.
than something that actually has a budget impact. But I'd love for us to kind of double check that and make sure, and I'd love for us to double check, why is it the certificated salary cost has gone up $360,000? I mean, basically
above
above what was projected in second entry. We can explain 137,000 right here, but 137 is not 360.
No. No, it's not.
So anyway, that would be helpful if we could sort of
like I said, I didn't focus a lot on the restricted since the contributions didn't change a whole bunch. So then I kind of backed off on that, but definitely I'll look into that more.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
So earlier we had an ending fund balance of 5.3 million, and here's the components of that 5.3 million: revolving cash 25,000, legally restricted funds of 292,000, assigned 3.5, and I'll get into what is comprised of assigned, economic uncertainty reserve 1.4 million, and really unassigned general instructional purposes about $20,000. And that's what makes up the 5.3. I'll get into more detail in terms of what those are. Here's just a quick snapshot of all the funds within the district. They're all estimated to be positive. Bond interest redemption fund, really no activity, but eventually once more data comes in, then we'll have the activity. But the projected amounts that we got from the county, pretty much we had equal amount of revenues and expenditures coming in. For building fund, this is just really a guesstimate in terms of what we're going to be spending next year. That's going to be revised based on actual needs. So for subsequent years, the LCFF does make adjustments per the Department of Finance estimates, as well as, of course, being funded at target. State revenue is expected to decline in 1920 due to the removal of those one-time funds. So even though more than likely we're going to get half those funds this year, it's not going to be like a snowball effect for subsequent years, because the full amount that we were expected to receive was removed for 1920. So it's a one-time hit. Certificated step and column costs are expected to be 2%, whereas classified is estimated to be 1.8. In addition, for 1920, 3.2 teacher on special assignment positions were removed. Adjustments to benefits reflect effect of the salary changes, as well as increased pension costs, health and welfare benefit costs of 6%. Again, different from the 3%, maybe a little bit more conservative, well, definitely more conservative, but we'll know if it was too conservative or if we should ratchet that down a little bit. Supplies and services are expected to remain relatively constant for subsequent years. The variances in services pretty much was related to election appropriations. Capital outlay for the current and subsequent years is based on estimated equipment needs relating to career technical education as well as ROP. Here's just a quick chart of the CalSTRS and CalPERS rate increases. Really by 24-25, 26% for classified. Right now, we're looking at 18.62 and 16.28 for this year, but it's just going to climb to be increased amounts year after year. For CalSTRS, it's more concrete because those are set by ed code, so it would actually have to take legislature action to change those rates. PERS is based on market conditions, them looking at their liability and adjusting it. So these are more subject to change than the STRS rates. So looking at our 3-year projection, right now we're projecting, again, 1.8 million for 18-19, 1.3 deficit in 1920 and 2.2 in 2021. That would result in an ending fund balance by the end of the 3rd year at pretty much 1.5, and that 1.5 is comprised of 25 non-spendables and assignments, but there's no more assignments because I'll show you that a little bit later, as well as the unassigned, which is pretty much the reserve for economic uncertainty at 1.4. So even though you're seeing these deficits, these are pretty much being held constant because we're taking money from the assigned portion of the fund balance and reducing it correspondingly to those deficits.
One thing I don't see here, I believe these numbers reflect the decision. Yeah, there we go.
0.5.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, we don't have.
Yes, these are
we don't have the
dependent.
situation that we had at second interim, where at second interim it was very clear we had a positive certification. Here you only have a positive certification if you make a $2.5 million budget reduction in 2019-2020. And I know we don't have to actually do that for the adopted budget. But
Correct.
by the time we get to first interim,
The county's going to want specifics.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a placeholder of 2.5 million. But then they're going to need specifics, and then by second interim, they're going to need action on that.
And this still leaves us in deficit spending at the end of 2021 with a reserve of only 3%.
Yeah.
So
we've got another $2.5 million to go.
We need to do something before we get there.
Yes. Yes. And that's why this was yellow and that's yellow, because all these ending fund balances is dependent on that 2.5. So thank you for emphasizing that.
So even if we make cuts of $2.5 million in 2019 and carry them forward into the next year, we would still be, if we didn't cut more or raise revenues elsewhere, like say parcel taxes, we would still be at 2.2 million deficit spending the year after that.
Correct.
And we would crash through that reserve floor that we cannot crash.
Yes, exactly. This pretty much 2.5 is the minimum in order to be at your 3%.
Could I just add that that's contingent on all the assumptions that have been made, or necessarily made, which we know we're going to see some changes in those assumptions over the next 4, 5, 6 months, basically, as we get more information.
Yeah, and we already know pretty much more than likely one change in assumptions that will be taking away $600,000. So this will be $600,000 worse. This won't be 600,000 worse, but this would be, because remember, those one-time funds they're not in this number or this number, but it would make this number worse.
Jacob.
Could you please explain that? You said that earlier. I don't understand how, if we're losing one-time funding, but we're getting additional ongoing funding, that you're saying the situation is going to be worse.
Well, because I don't know what, right now, I can identify the loss of the one-time funds, but that additional 407, I don't know how it's going to be coming in. It's going to be LCFF, but I don't know if we're going to be able to add, is the augmentation going to be like 3.5%? So I don't know what to add.
Why do you keep saying it's going to be worse if you don't know?
No, what I'm saying is, if you just look at the mandate one-time funds, it's going to be worse right now until we get the other piece of the puzzle. So we don't know. Does that make, no? Okay.
I hear where you're coming from. It's just
Okay.
not. All right.
Yeah, pretty much, stay tuned. Really, that's what it is that we know one piece where it gets worse, but we don't know how it's going to get better. And is it going to be, yeah, we just don't know. But we'll know once the state enacts their budget.
So the scenario that I could envision that would be truly worse would be that the decision is made that all of the augmentation for LCFF goes to concentration funds, the concentration portion, as opposed to the base. I don't know if that's a possibility or not.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. But yeah, that would be an example if that was a possibility.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we just don't, until we find out how they do it.
We'll be conservative and say it's a loss. All right.
Well, I think we just have to, go with what we have here for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely, I mean, really, it will definitely be a revised budget brought before the board on that one.
Are we likely to know by August?
Oh, yeah, we'll likely to know like in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Really, we'll get a better idea, because once the budget is enacted, then it'll be picked apart in terms of, okay, what is this, in terms of, then we'll get the specific tools in terms of what do we add to on our LCFF.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mhm. Oh, definitely, and then we'll get more information for the enacted budget.
Lovely.
It's just with 407, because remember that right now what they're talking about is additional $407 million for districts. Well, $407 million is a lot of money, but spread all over the state of California, I just don't see it all as a whole bunch. But again, we'll wait and see.
For one,
We'll see.
So here's a reconciliation. So here we had the 1.8 million, 1.3 for 1920, and 2.2 for 2021. So here's a reconciliation of, okay, what changed from, or what is expected to change, projected to change, from 1.8 million to 1.3 million. Well, we are removing the 1.2 million of one-time mandate revenue. We're expected to get an additional $600,000 in LCFF funds, and an increase, of transfers from the special reserve fund to pay for capital outlay. So really, this 25 and that 25 pretty much net each other out, since the equipment costs are coming from Fund 17. Certificated and classified step and associated taxes, it's about 657. Projected health and welfare benefit increases, 407. Estimated pension increases, 563. Elimination of the TSA, 272,000. Board election cost variance, about 12,000. Capital outlay, 25, which is pretty much nets out to that 25. And then again, unidentified ongoing reductions of 2.5. So we would have to have that. If we don't have that, then this number is going to be a lot larger.
Yeah.
And is that 2.5 million also in the right column? I'm not seeing it there.
No, because what it is, it's an ongoing one. So
It's only done one.
if it was in the right.
So you're only talking deltas there.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yes. Yeah, exactly. Now, if this 2.5 million was here too, that means then I would be conveying, we have to cut another 2 point. So like, for example, in your example, in order to be a balanced budget, then yes, we'd have 2.2 here. So for 2021, expected about getting about $350,000 in LCFF funds. Increase, decrease in transfers, 180, and that's different from here because we're going to need additional funds just to make that 3% from Fund 17, around $220,000. So that's why this 180 doesn't match with that one to that 40,000. Again, we also have the same thing: step costs, projected health, estimated pension increases. Now, even though this is unrestricted funds, the majority of the programs are either unrestricted or would require a contribution. So these costs are actually for the whole general fund. So I do it in that manner because special ed is such a large portion. Parcel tax money is pretty much all tapped out. So in terms of measuring that increase, really the majority of that increase, even though it's on a restricted portion of the general fund, it is really on the unrestricted side.
So could you run by me again? These are just deltas, of course, but
correct.
What we're assuming then is that we are transferring, about $220,000 a year from Fund 17?
Just one in 2021, just to make our 3%. And it's a possibility.
But there's a $25,000 in 2019-20?
Yes. So let's see here. Let me go over here.
Non-spendable.
So like, for example, for here, we're going to transfer about $25,000 more from from Fund 17, but then we're going to have expenses and capital costs of $25,000.
Oh, okay, so those are a wash.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So basically, I guess what I'm getting at then is, by the end of 2021, we will only have reduced Fund 17 by $180,000? As I recall, it's got about $720,000, $750,000 in it.
Yeah. So like, for example, right now, here's the special reserve fund. So for 18-19.
There it is. Yeah. Okay.
So it's going to, right now, here's the balance in 18-19. So, and here's the $220,000. So in 2021, we're reserving it in 18-19. In 19-20, it's still reserved. The reason why it's not here is because then it's budgeted to be transferred out of the special reserve fund to Fund 1. So really, from 18-19, we're going from 719 to 380.
So we are
to assist with capital costs.
So, I'm sorry. So we are making a transfer from Fund 17 into the 2018-19 general fund budget of $220,000?
No. Let's see here. I wonder how I can explain that. Okay. So like, for example, let me see. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, there we go. So for 18-19, $55,000 is being transferred from Fund 17 to Fund 1. And we're going to have capital costs of $55,000 in Fund 1. So really, these capital costs are being paid from Fund 17. So really, it started off for career technical education equipment at $250. That's pretty much was the allocation. $55,000 is being used in 18-19.
So these are just fund balances. These are not.
These are fund balances.
Yeah, these are
but
fund
the delta
balances,
is
and
going from.
You've essentially assigned the fund balance to these categories.
But the reason why this is going from 195 to 115 is because 80,000 is projected to be transferred out in 1920.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the previous chart, when we're still deficit spending 2021, we're also still rating a fund that will be depleted
Possibly
at some
by,
point.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. About $220,000. It was something that I had to.
Yeah. So we're 3 minutes from hitting our time ceiling. We'll need to extend the meeting.
We're out of money. We're out of time. Hey.
We're out of time. Okay, so we're all going home now. Well, since you brought it up, Ross,
Do you want to extend
we
the meeting?
have, according to the agenda, after we finish the budget discussion, about 25 minutes worth of agenda items. And I don't know how close we are to finishing the budget discussion.
Can't table the tobacco one.
Can we table any of them?
The tobacco
Is a must.
item is a must, because that has to be sent in
Or we
very
lose
early
it.
tomorrow morning.
We need to pass that one. What about the others?
The,
Literature, novels, business management, text.
right, the school year calendar has to be,
I wanted to comment on the school board calendar
Yes, I
item.
know, it could be
So-
well more than 5 minutes. Okay, so we need to extend the meeting in any case. What do you think, till 10:30?
Sure.
Okay, let's go on.
Would that be 10:30 today? Or-
No, 10:30 tomorrow morning.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see here. Okay, so I got done with the reconciliation. And then here's just, again, per SB 858, we have to just go over the fund balance disclosure. What's in the assigned fund balance is the 1920 projected deficit of 1.3, which ties to that 1.3, and then we have 2.2. So I like to reserve it, because what I don't like to show is like money falling to the bottom and then giving that false picture of, oh, well, okay, we have these funds utilized. No, we have to put that in a separate pot in the fund balance in order to make it apparent that that we have to use those reserves for future subsequent year deficit spending. And then one-time instructional supplies, which is pretty much the remainder of 20,000. That's why this kind of floats depending on what the 3% reserve is. And then you have the other components, which I talked about before. And then for the special reserve fund, same thing. That falls under SB 858. Looking at a fund balance of 719, comprised of CTE, general fund program assistance, and then facilities for 304, and so forth. So for status, so despite current year and future year projected deficit spending, the projected budget and multi-year projection support that the district is projecting to be able to meet its financial obligations for the current 2 subsequent years. Of course, that assumes $2.5 million of ongoing budget reductions. If the district was to have to provide a positive certification, I would say it'd be positive at this point, but there is no certification for the adopted budget. It's either approved, conditionally approved, or not approved. The proposed budget is only an initial blueprint for revenues and expenditures, especially since the budget preparation occurs before the enacting of the state budget. Actual revenues and expenditures are not known for the current year, i.e. we haven't closed out. We don't have that firm fund balance. Health and welfare rates are preliminary, as I talked about. Enrollment and staffing are major variables until the fall. So there's still a lot of changes. So again, this is the first step. So for next steps, the AUSD Governing Board is scheduled to adopt the district's budget on June 26th. State enacts its budget by June 30th. District revises its budget based on the state's enacted budget. Must occur no later than 45 days after the enacted state budget. Analyze class sizes, capacity to determine how many inter-district transfers can be accepted. Really, this is the amount that we'd be getting per child. I pretty much took the rates and multiplied it by about 95% in order to estimate the attendance to enrollment ratio. For next steps, develop a list of expenditure reductions and identify and quantify those reductions. 2.5, so hopefully it gets better and hopefully we won't have to use what's identified, but definitely to start identifying what needs to be cut in the absence of additional revenue. Complete the year-end closing of the 17-18 financials and prepare the 18-19 first interim report, which reflects any changes in the funding, staffing adjustments, health and welfare, supplies, and so forth. Are there any other further questions?
Okay, thanks. I have a couple of comments. First, we had of the library program earlier, at the beginning of the meeting, and the librarians made a great point of how important to their program the library aides are. And the reason they made that point is that during the Great Recession, the libraries lost all their aides. We are now looking at the possibility of $4.7 million in cuts to our budget. That's unthinkable to me. So we need to be talking about parcel taxes now. And we need to figure out how much we can possibly get in parcel taxes, and then figure out how much we still need to cut from the budget. And these are going to be very difficult conversations. It's a pretty depressing position to be in, but we'll lose control of the district if we don't do it. The state will step in and take over, so we need to do it.
A couple of thoughts. So one, Measure LL does sunset, so that if we wanted to pass another parcel tax just to replace it, it'd have to be no later than the fall 2020 ballot, and that was something like 1.5 million. And so a question to you, does all of this projection assume no salary increases?
Correct.
So this is just advancing step column, the workforce ages and modulo that some people will, high-paid people will leave, be replaced by cheaper people, but generally step and column progression means it'll rise like that, and that's independent of any raises to anybody.
Correct. I haven't budgeted for attrition either, so I don't go, okay, well, we're going to have like possible 10 people retire and capture those savings.
But historically, this is the sort of rate increase you'd expect given attrition and hiring, et cetera, generally on average.
Yeah, I usually don't. Yeah, I don't budget for attrition because then retiree benefits come into play. So if you budget for attrition, then you're gonna have to budget for additional retiree benefits down the road. So for the most part, retiree benefits and attrition for certificated staff tend to mitigate each other.
Balance out. Mary?
I had some technical questions, but I will waive them because I can just email them, and you guys are out of time. So I'll just focus on comments. It's a good point that you make. Staff increases are not in here. This is a habit that this board has of budgeting without allowing for and without expecting any settlements, even though we were in negotiation for settlements. And I just want to point out that all that your lawyers will tell you that that's normal. It's not necessarily the only way to do it. There was a time when we had in this district, a multi-year understanding that we took the COLA, and the COLA was, we understood that staffing was 80% of the budget or whatever number close to that we come up with it, and that meant that the COLA was going to be used 80% of it for increases to all of the different employees. And we understood that, and we worked with that assumption, and then we would use health and welfare to reduce that. So we also understood that we needed to share that out to health and welfare, and it was a way of expecting and planning for the need to give staff raises. And so just to point out, not even talking about the teachers, if we don't see raises for the clerical and custodial staff and for the library aides and for the classroom aides to match the minimum wage increases that have happened in our nearby cities, we're going to continue to see classrooms that have not the legally required number of aides, and all kinds of things are going to go to hell in a handbasket. I was, in Albany High today, and we're down a custodian, and you can feel it. You can feel it right away. So losing some programs and administrators does hurt a school district, but when your staff starts to exit, the school district goes down really fast. And it's actually a strategic issue to plan for maintaining salaries. So San Leandro just settled for 17% over 3 years. San Lorenzo, I think, settled for 17% over 3 years. You're going to get outclassed if you don't plan. So we just need to start thinking about that and dealing with that, even though it's scary what you're looking at. And if you're talking about, just to remind you, in this budget, the administrative costs are still 8% of expenditures, and the statewide average is still 6% of expenditures, and the difference between those two would be about $1 million. I know that you keep telling us that you can't make any more cuts to administration, but if you're going to make $2.5 million in cuts, then you're going to have to make $1 million in cuts to administration first, and then take the rest from program. You're just going to have to do it. Get over it. Move. I want to point out that that budget approvals don't have to be this kind of passive process where you hear the budget and then you approve it. You can make changes even now. So if you go down, I love this. Thank you so much for this lovely list of what's different between second interim and now. Partly because as a union, we know that second interim always looks good, and then now it's always bad. Second interim is we don't have to make budget cuts. This is we're going into negotiations. Everything is terrible. But as an accountant, I appreciate conservative numbers, but this is good. This helps us to see what our staff is spending that they did not think they would be spending, or they claimed they didn't think they would be spending some months ago. And you don't have to just let this happen. $60,000 for safety supplies, $50,000 for professional development. Some of these things you could say right now, no, sorry, let's not do that. Look at this. Look at those numbers. We can't do that. Let's not do that. And it wouldn't necessarily cause the sky to fall. So you could do that now. You don't have to wait. The parcel tax is a major measure of our community support. And it is not one because it's needed. It's one because of community support. You need the teachers out there fighting for it, and you need to be able to defend how the money was spent. Charlie's point almost got there, but we wrote that, and we argued over this at some length, and we ended up with language that includes that teacher salaries are an acceptable use of parcel tax funds. And so it is possible to reduce parcel tax programs and acknowledge that the general fund cannot continue. What we know, and we knew going into that, remember, is that if parcel taxes are fixed on certain programs, they inevitably hurt teacher salaries by, as the program gets more expensive, it draws off of the general fund. Now you're seeing that happening, right? And then that reduces the money that's available in negotiations. That's what we're seeing happening right now. And that's what was happening back in 2002 when we wrote that language to avoid this situation. We gave ourselves that flexibility when we changed the language, and we should use that flexibility now. Yeah, and so I agree with you 100%, but I just wanted to make it clear. Lastly, thank you for mentioning declining enrollment and spotlighting it in this, something that we've been under talking about. We had 200 more students in the district in 2014, 2015. It didn't kill us. We didn't die. It was miserable, but we didn't die. We can have that again, but again, I point out to you that we had 200 more students in 2010, 2011, and only 6% administrative costs. And now we're up to 8% and a lower enrollment. So again, that $1 million of administrative costs that can be cut, it can. It can be done. And if you'd like us to name names, we will, but not tonight. And this, since you're not going to talk about my textbooks, this is for Charlie. We just shut down the venture program on our 5th anniversary, and it's an exceedingly limited edition T-shirt that goes to the only person who was here with us.
All right, thank you. Since it's limited, maybe I could auction it to support.
If you can get $2.5 million for it, that would be great. Okay, other questions or comments?
I know it's not going to happen tonight, but something needs to be done. It needs to be done quickly. And parcel tax is part of it, but I don't want to just rely on just the parcel tax. These discussions have been going on ever since I've been on the board. And for us to all act like we're just, this is so terrible, this has happened. It's been happening for years, and it's as long as I'm on the board, I want to make sure that the next people coming on the board don't have to deal with the mess that has been left to us. I don't want to leave it to somebody else. So something needs to be done quick.
Thank you for that. I've been working with our HR department and with Carrie Nearharm Student Services to look at where we can increase enrollment and make sure that we don't overload classrooms. And so we're looking to do that for the 18-19 school year. And I think it was, I'd say about an average of $10,000. I know it's less because you have to mitigate in case we have to, hire additional staff. But we're hoping that that will generate some ongoing revenue. And that is opening up to interdistrict transfers. So we're already looking at where we can, how many students can we bring in for the 18-19 school year, which is the process that we're starting right now.
Jacob?
In addition to what I think Miriam was saying too, I mean, we still have 2 weeks left, and there is some stuff that we can start getting rid of now, if the board has the will to do it.
Ross?
I just wanted to note the discussions that I've been a party to that the rest of the board hasn't. The other reason to do interdistrict admits is things like avoiding combo classes. So if you've got 14 extra kids, bringing in another 14 gives you a class of 28 and doesn't have to have a, say, a two-third, second-third split, say. So there's noodling around the edges, but there's also the idea of, do we bring in a couple hundred to bring us back to the levels that we didn't like, but we were getting outside revenue for?
I mean, I will just mention that it's difficult to do that when we're in a building program that's causing us to not use the buildings that we're building for their intended purposes. And when the bond program was campaigned for with the idea that we were overcrowded. I mean, I know that enrollment has gone down, and I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm just saying that we're going to staff is going to have to look very carefully at where we actually have capacity, because we don't have a lot of capacity.
And how accurate are our projections for next year, given the variation of the village? Do we know that Cal's policy on families versus singles is?
No, they won't tell us anything. If they know, they may not even know. Okay, so the budget needs to come back for approval. It could come back on consent, or it could come back for discussion if we want to try to make some changes to it before we approve it. But before we talk about that, I'll just close the public hearing, because that's a separate issue. So the public hearing is closed, and now the question of how we bring the budget back.
I don't think it can come back on consent. I think there'll be more than enough either outside input or our thoughts that it bears,
Okay, so it'll come back for review and action.
Yes.
Charlie?
I would specifically like to see some changes made before it comes back. And it's too late now to really dig into it, but I think that if we could ask staff to really dig in, we were comfortable with a $600,000 something deficit spending level for 2018-19, and that's what we approved at the second interim. And now we're seeing something substantially different. I would love to see a proposed budget that looks a whole lot more like what we saw at second interim, if it's in any way feasible.
You know what I'm going to propose, since you dig into the budget deeper than anyone else, and Jacob, your semester's over now, so you have some time, or are you about to leave on vacation or something?
What depends if it's going to be worthy of my time. I mean, I sat on some of those other committees, and it was a waste of my time.
Well, I'm just proposing that you and Charlie meet with the superintendent to give input on what can be cut from the budget before the next meeting.
That's different, yeah. Well, I can do it. I can do it.
Good. Okay.
We decide when, and later on,
we have an ad hoc committee.
we'll work out the details later.
You and Charlie, you work out with the superintendent when you can meet, and then you'll bring back in 2 weeks a budget for the board to discuss.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else before we close this item and move on? Okay, then.
We've got time for a couple more items.
Well, we have several more items.
We have some we have to do.
We have some we have to do. So we have the adoption of literature novels for the high school, and adoption of a business management textbook for Albany High School. I think we can probably get through these pretty quickly.
So you were provided with a pretty extensive list of novels coming from the high school that they are seeking to adopt for several reasons. Their work and interest in this process began before the incidents of last spring at the high school, but certainly their interest was catapulted, and their desire to act was sort of driven by then the events. And so there are several novels that teachers piloted last year. This year I had the opportunity to sit in March with the English department and hear them sort of discuss at length the novels. And so they're bringing several forward for your consideration. They are working toward diversifying the literature that they teach in their classrooms in a number of ways, as you see. And so what you've got here are some sort of a rationale of why they've chosen these texts, and then part summary, part book review. And so these texts are available and will be available for the public at the Monroe office and then at the Bancroft office. The time for public hearing is 30 days. We've got plenty of time. There's plenty of time for folks who are, if they're interested in taking a look at these books. As a former English teacher myself, I'm really excited when I look at this list. We weren't teaching books like this when I was teaching English just a few short years ago. So this is what's coming forward from the English department for your consideration, and this will come back in the fall.
Okay, so I have a question that I'm sorry I didn't ask in advance. So if you don't know the answer, you can get it to me later. Is this an exhaustive list of all of the novels, or is this just additional novels in addition to others that they will continue to teach?
So what they're wanting to move toward is switching out some of the more traditional novels that they've been working with and bring these in. We had some conversation, but we didn't come to any resolution about sort of what do we do with novels that were sort of retiring officially, and do we want to go through that process? I think that will be a conversation that continues with the English department. So right now I would say this list is not exhaustive. These are not the only texts that would be taught in English classes. The first part of the list are novels that were piloted specifically. Then there are some at the bottom of the list that have been in the book room for many, many years, and they're not really sure if they were ever approved, and just want to sort of lift those up and be transparent about the books that they're teaching in their classrooms. And so we will continue to talk about, are there novels that you want to retire as a department, or since the books are already there, do you want to keep those on hand? But everybody was participating in this conversation. Many teachers participated in this pilot, and I would say that the general will of the English department as a whole is to move toward utilizing these more diverse texts and less so utilizing maybe some of the more traditional novels that are maybe in the book room.
Thanks. It looks like these novels are going to bring up some very interesting conversations in the classrooms. Ross?
And not all novels. I'm particularly pleased to see both the Howard Zinn book and Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, which is just a brilliant piece.
Well, Howard Zinn book has been used at Albany High before, but I guess it wasn't on the official list. Any?
And I didn't mention when the librarians presented, but I value librarians as subversives. I'm really glad that, the bulwark of First Amendment defense, et cetera, is really with the librarians and the teachers they're supporting.
Jacob?
I'm scratching my head.
Anything else? Good. Let's move on to the adoption of business management tech.
Okay. So Albany High School has been, for at least as long as I've been here, and that's not very long, been talking about how to really build their CTE offerings and to begin to develop pathways. And so they had sort of a lot of standalone classes that didn't maybe have a second year, so they weren't getting kids into pathways. There has been for 5 years, I just learned a few minutes ago, for 5 years a really great program at the high school, the Venture program. in collaboration with the principal, a decision was made to sort of try to be creative in thinking about how to build pathways, that you only have a sort of a select number of students and you've got some varying interests and you want to try to cater to those interests to sort of the maximum extent that you can. And that sort of, maybe there was a thread through these courses that sort of emphasized business. And so why not sort of start with that as a foundation and then allow that foundation then to sort of be the base for other courses to build. And so that's what you see here with the adoption of a business management textbook that would serve as the foundation upon which other viable then second year CTE pathways could be built. So Miriam Walden and a committee of teachers reviewed some texts and are bringing forward a recommendation. And I don't know, Miriam, if you wanted to say anything else about that, but that's coming forward for your consideration. Will also be available for public review and we'll come back in August.
Great. Any comments or questions on this?
I just wanted to say I really appreciated this board backup because it really laid out the situation and gave us a lot of information about how CTE programs and two-year pathways are being developed and thought of now at the high school. And so I found this very useful. Thank you.
And so I must say that all the credit goes to Miriam Walden because she wrote it. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. When we bring this back, she'll be on consent? Okay, terrific. Now we have review and action. We have the tobacco use prevention education, which we need to pass tonight if we want to get some funding.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Carrie Neerheim.
Good evening. I'm happy to bring this to you this evening. This will be at no cost to the district. What we're doing is changing some language in our board policy to be more comprehensive about inhalation devices. And as you can see at the bottom of my backup, I covered all the things that we would lose if we don't make this decision, because we need to have that language in our board policy in order to still qualify for the 2B grant. So they have extended the deadline for us so that we could hold the board meeting, but I am hoping that you will pass this.
Okay, any questions or comments on it? Do we have a motion?
I move that we pass this changed language to our board policy.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you so much.
Okay, we have a job description for a maintenance and facilities coordinator. I understand this is going to be a change to an existing position, is that right?
Yes, this is a current position that is being reclassified, and our HR department met with the CSEA union leadership to work on this reclassification. So I have Cynthia Tia here and Cheryl Cotton also here if the board has any questions on this this recommendation for the job description for maintenance and facilities coordinator.
Any questions on it? Charlie?
So I guess this isn't so much a question, just seeking confirmation that we're not adding a position here. We're simply recognizing that somebody has taken on a certain amount of work that had previously been done under another position, and we effectively are creating a new classification for somebody who's already employed.
We're making the job description match the job that's already being done.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? How about a motion?
I move that we approve this job description for maintenance and facilities coordinator.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thanks for staying up late with us. And the school year calendar.
And since both of our HR directors are here, this again is the being submitted for approval for the 1920 school year calendar, and I have both Cynthia and Cheryl here to answer any questions.
Kim, I know you had some comments on this.
I think the presentation should go first.
Okay.
Wait, I meant their presentation. Were they going to speak to the item?
I don't think so.
Did you, unless you want to explain the process on how you come to a decision about the calendar and working with the calendar advisory committee? You want to just give an update?
Sure. Thanks. So last year when we talked about the calendar, it was mentioned that we should have input from different stakeholders, especially from the community. So we convened a meeting, we called it the Calendar Advisory Committee. It was made up of the different PTA presidents. We met, I think, 3 to 4 times. We met and talked about what they'd been hearing out in the community about any of the concerns. We together developed a survey to try and tease some of that information out. We then got together and talked about the results and met and talked specifically about the placement of staff development days, because that seemed to be a very important topic that we could address with this 1920 calendar. Some of the other concerns, we would not have been able to have a meaningful discussion about how to have any changes to the calendar for 1920. So we did concentrate on the staff development day, which we were able to place on a day that is a holiday for other school districts, and because we have parents in our school district who have certain days off, and then we have parents, teachers here whose students are in other districts who have particular days off. So we tried to find a day that could help accommodate that. We then took some of that information to the bargaining units where we met. We came up with a couple of different calendars, and they voted on the one that they liked best, and that is the one that I present tonight.
Okay, Kim?
Well, I must say that I appreciate the attention that was given to the academic calendar, but I don't feel that adequate progress has been made. I cannot vote to approve any academic calendars until we make real progress in addressing the very real problems that exist with our academic calendar. I think that parents, students, and staff have had issues with the calendar for 10 years now. If we open up I made a couple of slides. The second slide? No, that's not the second slide.
Part of the board packet?
No, this is something Kim did.
Go for, I don't know, these, okay, here we go. So this was from Marla Stevenson's Friday letter back in 2008. And they had a calendar committee that worked over 2 years. And these were their main take-home points. And you can see that we're stagnant. We haven't made progress on these. If there should be one more slide after this. Okay, there's the rest of their recommendations, and staff development day in October, that we achieved this year after 10 years of working toward a calendar that supports learning and student wellness. I think that we failed to do the right thing for our students, and this violates all 3 of our strategic goals. Number 1, increasing academic success. I think that there are calendar issues that affect learning. Our second strategic goal is support the whole child, and that brings in the mental health aspects, the stress and anxiety that students are experiencing, especially at the high school, and even down to the middle school now are addressable by some changes in the calendar, okay? And then lastly, our third strategic goal, communicate and lead together. There's been a failure there because for many, many years the calendar process was closed to any input from the parents or the students. And it was just operating in this loop between the district office and the teachers, the ATA. And I really think that we need to open that up. And I appreciate the fact that potentially now we're going to have some attention paid. Julie, if you can, the survey that was done this year and that went out was a step, but I think there were some problems with it. The one with the two graphs on it, the two graphs. Yep, there we go. I think that I took this survey myself when it came in my email, and I think what the Wellness Committee had discussed is that we could satisfy our families more if we had a full week off for Thanksgiving break and a reduced break in February. However, the survey questions came out just like, you know, do you like having a break at Thanksgiving? Do you like having a break in February? Well, like most people like having a break, you know, and so it shows that there was general approval. But I don't think that this was phrased in a way that gave our community a chance to make a real choice. If you go to the other slide, as in this question, for the past several years, school started in August and ended in June. How do you like the current model? This is well-intentioned, but it gives zero information about what a calendar change would be trying to achieve in terms of learning and in terms of reducing anxiety. So I want to applaud the effort that went into it, but I am going to vote no on this calendar in hopes that we can take some real action steps next year and fix some of these issues for the benefit of our students.
Thanks, Kim. Other comments? Charlie?
Yeah. So I guess I have a similar reaction. I appreciate the effort that's gone in. You know, I've voted for these calendars 8 years, and beginning of this year, I said, you know, I'm not going to vote for a calendar like this again unless I can see some progress toward our establishing that breaks will be genuine breaks for both students and staff. And I can live with the calendar we have if somehow we had something more here that got us to the point where we understood that breaks would really truly be breaks. The language that I see here is a little vague for me. There will be ongoing discussion about whether or not students will be expected to complete work during school breaks. That doesn't feel like much of a commitment to me. So I feel like this is an incomplete. I'd love to see it completed somehow. We have very little time to do it. I'm willing to see it tabled and brought back in a couple weeks if that would make a difference. If it won't make a difference, and we just need more time, but we're being again presented with the situation where A, we have to approve it, and B, you don't have enough time to work out what you want to see worked out, then I would also have to vote against it tonight.
Jacob?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 calendar that was agreed upon by ATA and the district.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? What happens if this is not approved?
Go ahead.
So I'd like to comment a little bit about the questions that were asked. The advisory committee knew about different concerns that people had about different aspects of the calendar. And when they crafted the questions, they didn't want to lead anybody in a specific way. So they crafted the questions in a more general way. And perhaps they're too general, but they didn't want to lead the answers, I guess. If it is not approved today, it would have to be approved at the next board meeting, because per contract, the calendar is supposed to be approved each year by June 30th. I'm not sure that moving the start dates perhaps forward gives people enough time, gives the district enough time to fully decide how that's gonna work, right? So if it's not approved tonight, per contract, it's supposed to be approved by the 30th, and I'm guessing if it's not approved by the 30th, then that, since it's part of the contract, it would be a grievable item. Yes, that's what our ATA president's saying.
Okay, so Charlie, go ahead.
So I don't really understand what the point of bringing something back to the board for approval is if the board has no choice except to approve it, when it doesn't necessarily represent what the board asked to have brought back to us. So I respect the negotiating process, but I don't know that what I thought we were fairly clear about seeking has appeared in what I see here. So I don't know what to do. It puts us in a tight spot. And I'm certainly willing to table it tonight if there's some way that it can be brought back in 2 weeks, which reflects a little stronger commitment toward really working toward making breaks be breaks. And it seems to me there's plenty of ways to do that, in that we don't even have to change anything in the calendar to do that. I just have not seen anything brought to me. There's really no reason at all that we couldn't come to some agreement that all projects and exams could be administered before winter break. Nobody grades anything over break. You come back afterwards, you finish the semester in January, you do your grading then. I can imagine ways that this could be creatively addressed to provide a break, a genuine break for everybody. But if we're not willing to talk about that, I don't understand how we make any progress.
Cheryl?
I think that there is a willingness to talk about it and engage in that conversation, and we're planning on and actively involved. We have dates for discussion to begin to have that conversation with ATA, and I'm glad Karen is coming up.
All I want to say is we had a brief discussion about this today, and we have a policy at the high school that does speak to no homework over these breaks. Whether it's fully implemented is another issue, as we know. AP is also another issue, especially over long breaks, because the volume of the curriculum just demands, if we're going to prepare our students properly, that they take on a lot of those additions. So maybe we have to think about all of that. But there is a current policy, and I implemented in my general ed classroom, that they don't have homework over breaks. Patty does that, and some other teachers, but is it everybody? Probably not. But it is policy. It was produced under Ted Barone. So it's in the high school. Wherever it's listed, it's there somewhere.
So I need to do a couple of things. One is we need to find out, is a policy or excuse me, not a policy, is it a procedure that was instituted at the high school, or is it in board policy? And we need to check board policy to see if there's anything that is written. If there is no board policy, then what we would potentially could do is actually bring draft board policy that says that this is what a true break means, but define it, and then create policy around not having homework or projects assigned during breaks. And we'd have to define what the breaks are. So that is also another option, and that board policy can be fairly quickly written and taken to the board policy committee.
Ross?
Just as a comment before any of us seconds the motion on the table, I would say I think it would be unfair to sort of throw the grenade of let's stop and reconsider this in today's meeting and 2 weeks from now's meeting. And I think it's absolutely fair to say, wow, it's been far too long before we resolved an issue of student stress and other issues that the calendar is a major contributor to. I don't think there's anything in board policy about breaks. I absolutely think there's a policy at the high school that's not uniformly applied. So we as a board could figure out how to get to that point and work with the current calendar as proposed and a better policy on making true breaks toward probably as soon as possible. I would happily see a calendar like a number of districts moved up. We have a true break because of end of semester at the winter break. Moving things forward to handle AP testing. It was just a shock to see all the rush towards AP and then the month or so of, coast afterwards. So I'm more than willing to second the motion to pass this with every concern that both Charlie and Kim have expressed. So I will second Jacob's motion.
Okay, I'm going to suggest an alternative motion, which is to pass this tonight, but with a resolution by the board that we will address the issue of breaks being true breaks, either through board policy or directions and negotiations, so that next year we won't be facing the same issue. Would that be an acceptable modification to the motion? Jacob?
So the board's going to unilaterally do that, or they're going to do it with?
No, well, it'll have to be negotiated.
Right.
The board will do what it can to make sure that those negotiations happen. Because in the past, the board has talked about it, but when the negotiations happened, there's been no progress.
Yeah, I just want to state something. Like I said before, when I was trying to get, and thank you, Ross, for seconding it, this is not the teachers who just did this. This is both sides. And the way it's being presented to me is the teachers are not willing to hear what other people have to say. So I take issue with that. But
no, I think you're right. I think the issue is that the board has not been clear enough in its direction to its negotiators.
And then the board needs to let them take responsibility, not blame somebody else for it.
That's what I'm suggesting, is that the board take responsibility so that next year this doesn't happen again.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so Kim?
I'm willing to second your motion, or if that's needed, but I just wanted to say that I also would not feel that it's fair to try to make a major change in the draft calendar in the next 2 weeks. That's not the way that you successfully roll out a change.
No, but we can't.
Yeah, and so that's I didn't want anybody to think that I was trying to push for that, because I do want us to look at calendar changes and start time changes also, and whatever we can do to reduce student stress. And I want to do it in a way that where we have all of our stakeholders engaged and that we're working together cooperatively toward a shared goal, and that will guarantee us success. So I just need to let you know that given how strongly I've pushed for this and for so many years, I will not be able to vote yes on this calendar, but I look forward to seeing some progress and maybe being able to vote yes next year.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I think we have an understanding. The motion on the table is to approve this calendar with the understanding that the board will work with the negotiation team and possibly through board policy to make sure that next year's calendar has at least gone through a full consideration of changes to make sure that breaks are true breaks, and possibly to align the calendar with the UC calendar, whatever other changes the board decides should be negotiated by that time. Charlie?
Well, I think we might actually be talking about 3 different years here. I know you said next year.
Well,
this refers to 2019, 2020.
2019, 2020. So when I'm saying next year, I mean the next year's vote, which will be on the 20.
So what I would actually find more compelling would be, yes, to follow through on the 2021 calendar, as both you and Kim have indicated, that we'd like that to go a different direction. I actually don't think how I could have been more clear. I sat here and I said I will not vote yes on another calendar like the one we've seen before, unless I see something different. And I did say that. That was just me, you know.
No, that's fine. So I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Well, hang on.
Yeah,
what I'd like to see, actually, is if what we're going to do is adjust the question of making breaks be true breaks, not through the calendar itself, but through some sort of dialogue around board policy, school policy, and how that's implemented, I don't see that that needs to wait till 2021. To me, it would be a real win to see that happen for 2018, 2019.
Well, let's put that on the next item, which is matters introduced by the board.
Well, actually, I'm trying to get us to what this particular motion says. I don't want this motion to say we're just going to have this dialogue about how to make breaks be true breaks, which is applicable to the 2021 calendar. I'd like to see it applicable as soon as we can get to some shared understanding. And that might be the 2018-2019 calendar if we work at it.
Okay, so what would you like this motion to say?
Well, I think you probably articulated, I would simply replace next year with as soon as possible. You know.
Okay, well, there are separate issues that I'm trying to tease out.
Yeah.
The motion has to be concerned with the school calendar. If we can fix the question of true breaks without changing the school calendar, then that goes in the agenda, and that's a separate issue. But I think there are still school calendar issues. We might still end up with the same school calendar, but we might not, because there are other issues in terms of aligning with the UC calendar and other things that we haven't.
So maybe the easiest thing to do is just go ahead and take a vote on what we have here. I have no credibility if I don't do what I said I would do.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I'm going to ask for a roll call
I was
vote.
very clear about that.
And that's fine. I just want to make sure we have, for agenda items, introduced by the board, the discussion of true breaks. But I also want the motion to indicate that well in advance of next year's calendar approval, there will be a full discussion by the board of whether we feel there should be other changes to the calendar.
But that should be 2 separate things.
Yes.
Just run the vote.
Yes, 2 separate things. So may we have a roll call vote, please?
Which one are we voting on?
We're voting on this calendar.
Okay.
President Black.
Aye.
Vice President Stapleton Gray.
Aye.
Board Member Blanchard.
No.
Board Member Clark.
And as I said before, the administration and ATA both worked on this together, so I say yes.
Board Member Trutain.
No.
Okay, thank you. That brings us somewhat late to agenda items and matters introduced by the board. There's one that we just introduced, which is discussion of a way to make breaks true breaks with or without a change to the calendar. There was another, I think, at the beginning of the meeting.
Yes, we have donations report over the years. There was also the resolution, a discussion about the resolution to remove AUSD from the city charter and to come back for the budget back on review and action with proposed reductions.
Great. Any others? Jacob?
Just a little clarification. So as far as the voting issue, we can only talk about being taken off of the charter, or can we talk about other possibilities?
We can talk about other possibilities.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding, if this were to go on the 2018 ballot in November, the council would need to know something by like July. So if we met 2 weeks from now to talk about it, we might just end up talking about it and take an action at a special meeting or something like that, if we were going to take an action. And we might not take any action. But I think our timeline is pretty compressed.
So I can title this again, election methods. We've done that as a title before on an item if the board would like that broad of a topic.
Right. Why don't we, we might want to, in order to have a resolution to the city council by July, we would need to pass it at the next board meeting, but we could also not pass it at the next board meeting if we come up with another solution.
We're going to try to craft something and pass it.
No, we'll bring something to the board meeting that can be then wordsmithed or rejected, whatever. But there'll be something to start with. Kim?
I would just advise staff that the Speaker, Preston Jordan, brought up a couple of legal questions, and I think we would definitely need the advice of our attorney.
Right. We should look into that, absolutely.
Since the issue's up now, I think it's kind of extreme just to go ahead and say to extricate us from the charter, because we might have a different opinion than what the city council thinks.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a little heavy-handed, you know.
We don't have to do it. It's for us to discuss.
Also worth noting, we can always talk to council members too. I think the board and the council should be talking more regularly on a lot of things, including some great areas for collaboration. And it might be that we come diametrically opposed on this particular issue, but let's talk to them.
Just watch for Brown Act violations. They are restricted by the Brown Act just as we are. But one-to-one conversations with council members, as long as you don't talk to more than two.
And I suspect between Rochelle and Nick, and then on the other extreme, maybe Michael Barnes, you would probably get a spectrum of views on this.
Okay. I think that's it for tonight. We are adjourned.